At the evening party, the girl I pursued for 16 years finally agreed to marry me. But on the day she got pregnant, I chose to mysteriously disappear. When everyone was blaming me for being an irresponsible scumbag, she resolutely chose to have the baby, thinking that I must have had some compelling reason to heartlessly abandon them. Was that really the case? Until our daughter was diagnosed with leukemia at the age of 1. Yi Nuwanyi went crazy looking for me all over the world. I didn't show up, and that's when she realized the reality. I remember at that time Yi Nuwanyi hated me to the core, hated my disappearance without a word, hated my cold-bloodedness towards our daughter, and wished I would die in front of her immediately. But I still love her, love our daughter. I only hate myself for not protecting them. I remember our daughter had a high fever at that time. Seeing Yi Nuwanyi frantically looking for me all over the world, I can't remember how much my heart hurt at that time, but I didn't dare to go out and acknowledge her, nor did I dare to say that I had a terminal illness and only had 1 month to live. While Yi Nuwanyi was crying and looking for me, I risked losing my life. I secretly went to the hospital to donate bone marrow to our daughter. Ask the attending doctor to keep it a secret for me. If my wife asks, just say it was donated by a kind-hearted person. And the doctor kept the promise, not revealing my situation to Yen Nuan for half a year. In order to show her gratitude, Yen Nuan looked for the donor for many years. But even if she thanked them in person during these 5 years, what she doesn't know is, I developed Alzheimer's disease in the second week after donating bone marrow to my daughter. As my memory declined, in order to remember my wife Yen Nuan, during that time, I wrote her 10 love letters, or rather, farewell letters. I poured all my feelings for my wife over the past 16 years into them, until she participated in a live show looking for scumbags. That's when my 10 love letters were exposed. As the show aired as scheduled, my first love letter was also made public. When Nuan Nuan wrote this letter, I really missed you, but I can't return to your side. Nuan Nuan, do you know, apart from the first year, in fact, I have been by your side for these 5 years, never leaving. The letter had just begun to be read. A sense of sadness began to spread. People were unknowingly drawn into the atmosphere of sadness. My wife Yen Nuan frowned, originally thinking she could remain calm. But unexpectedly, she was moved as soon as it began. Seeing his daughter like this, Yen Nuan's father immediately became unhappy with your lousy show. Is it only about promoting how great Lin Chen is? He may be deeply in love with Nuan Nuan, but do you know, it was Lin Chen who disregarded family and friends, and abandoned me in the first place. Poor daughter Nuan Nuan cried out and went forward to grab her father. Dad, please stop. Nuan Nuan's father abruptly turned to his daughter. Do you know that Lin Chen has cheated, and it was with your best friend? Silly daughter, please wake up. But Nuan Nuan, the wife, unwilling to believe, asked her father in a trembling voice, how do you know, and why are you telling me now? Nuan Nuan's father explained softly to his daughter, I was just afraid of upsetting you. The night before the engagement, I saw Lin Chen and Lu Ruyan coming out of the hotel. Although I'm in my 60s, I could see it clearly. Upon hearing this, the wife almost fell, thinking about how I had already cheated on the day of our engagement. There was no trace of radiance in her eyes, only a chilling malice. Nuan Nuan's father hurriedly went forward to support his daughter, comforting her, silly girl, if I had told you back then, you would have definitely gone crazy. I would rather you hate me, than lose hope in this world. Everyone was moved by his words. Nuan Nuan let out a long sigh of relief. I walked to my father crying and said, Dad, I'm sorry, and then I couldn't hold it together and fell into my father's arms. But at this moment, Director Zhang stood up and said, I think I know the person you were talking about, Liang Ruyan. Don't you want to hear what Lin Chen has to say about her? As my letter was read out by the host again, Nuanyuan, do you still remember when we first entered our freshman year? The girl you used to always have by your side? I originally thought that she would be as kind-hearted as you. But to my surprise, during the school celebration, I found out that she was secretly bad-mouthing you to others backstage. It's a pity that you once considered her your best friend. So I started to investigate her, and as I expected, during the time when you were not at school, Liang Ruyan was the one who spoke ill of you the most behind your back. She said you were arrogant, looked down on everyone, pretended to be flirtatious, and seduced the boys in the class. She also said your character was bad and that you were arrogant in the dormitory. She even said that your family was poor and that you were a kept woman. Reading this, I felt dizzy. No wonder everyone was nice to me at the beginning of the school year. But after some time, no one wanted to talk to me at all. So it turns out that all of this was instigated by Liang Ruyan behind my back. I can't believe I once considered her my best friend. Human nature is truly frightening. Do you know, Nuanyuan? It's your best friend, who even invited me out alone at the time. At Yuanzhou Hotel, claiming to have something very important to tell me, and specifically mentioned it was related to you. She said, Lin Chun, I consider you a friend, that's why I'm telling you a secret. In fact, Nguyen was financially supported during her time in university. She also has ambiguous relationships with many men, and she has more than one boyfriend. Even now, she's still entangled with those people from her university days. You really have to believe me. Although I'm her best friend, I can't bear to see you being deceived. I've advised Nguyen many times to have a good relationship with you, but she just won't listen. Lin Chun, you shouldn't be too sad. There are so many good girls in the world, no need to hang yourself on one tree. And don't tell Nguyen it was me who said this. I'm just reminding you out of kindness. When I heard this, I couldn't hold back. I stood up suddenly and slapped the table. Liu Ruyen was scared off by me and tried to escape, but I grabbed her. I told her, never dare to defame my Nguyen, because you're not worthy. It was at this moment that the investigation results were sent to my phone. I glanced at it casually and threw it in front of her. Her face turned pale. Scared and wanting to run away again, this time I let go of her hand, and then I made a phone call. I did the only evil thing in my life, sending Liu Ruyen to the northwest of Huaxia, letting her reclaim the land for 3 years. Although I know it's wrong, I don't regret it. Nguyen, do you know, even without those investigation results, I would still believe in you. Because you are a light in my life, illuminating me. Yin Wan's body trembled violently, and I will also believe in you. These 6 words, like a heavy blow, struck her heart. When Lin Chen had no investigation results, he resolutely chose to trust himself. As for me, as soon as I heard about him and Liu Ruyen, I was on the verge of collapse. I actually didn't choose to believe in Lin Chen. At this moment, Yin Wan's frozen heart slowly began to crack. Yin Wan's father was dumbfounded, as if he had remembered something. Nguyen, do you have Liu Ruyen's phone number? Yin Wan's voice choked up, then she nodded. After handing over the phone, Yin Wan's father quickly dialed it. After a while, the call was finally answered, and a frightened voice came from the other end. Yin Wan, I have already atoned for my sins. Are you still unwilling to let me go? Please, back then I was wrong. I shouldn't have spread rumors about you everywhere. Please forgive me. After the call was finished, Yin Wan's father stood there blankly. It turns out that everything written in the letter was true. It's clear that Liu Ruyen was punished by Lin Chen. At this moment, I felt like a startled bird. What I did back then was nothing. Thinking about this, Mr. Yin Wan's father shook his body a bit. In an instant, those memories flashed through my mind like a movie. Dad, Lin Chen heard that you love tea, so he specially went to the mountain to pick the finest cloud and miss tea. Look, Lin Chen, I heard that you have a bad back, so he bought you this massage chair. It works really well. Dad, Lin Chen heard that you like running, and he asked me to remind you to take care of your knees. Dad, he also bought you a pair of specialized running shoes. And I ended up throwing away all those gifts because of a misunderstanding. Mr. Yin Wan's father looked up and stared at the director. Lin Chen once told me that he never had any complaints against you, because you were the first person in the world to give him a cake. He said that at that moment, the whole world was sweet. Mr. Yin Wan's father was greatly shocked. So, he was the little boy from the welfare home. I was so enthusiastic towards Lin Chen, yet he always maintained a smile. And when I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of forgetting all of you. As she read the letter, the wife's eyes turned red. Nguyen, someone is getting married today, and everyone is happy for them. I suddenly remembered something and decided to write it down. Do you remember, one day we were shopping and happened to pass by a jewelry store? I wanted to take you in to see because at that time, we were already discussing marriage. But you said you didn't want anything, just to live a peaceful life together. But in this world, which girl doesn't really like a ring? You were just comforting me. I forcibly took you in and told you it was just out of curiosity. That day when the waiter placed ring after ring in front of you, you tried hard to restrain yourself, not letting desire show in your eyes. But Nguyen, how could I not understand? As she read the letter, a smile appeared on Yin Wan's lips. She thought about the happy times she spent with Lin Chen before. At that time, Lin Chen would always make some unrealistic wishes to himself. After coming out of the jewelry store, Lin Chen once said to himself that he would definitely design a wedding ring by himself and tie himself up at the wedding. Yen Nguyen composed her thoughts and continued to listen to the contents of the letter. Continuing to read the letter, your kindness, Nguyen, has always been so heartwarming since childhood. At that time, I really wanted to tell everything to my Nguyen. Then I could have taken you around the world without any worries, to see the most beautiful scenery, and now my heart wouldn't ache like this. Nguyen, recently I have often felt numb all over, always feeling that my parents are calling out to me. I wonder if they had their reasons for abandoning me at the orphanage back then. Just like me. Perhaps they have been silently protecting me somewhere, but I never realized it. The anchor reading here can't continue. This letter is quite different from the previous ones, not much narrative, just a sorrowful and detailed account. Faced with the ticking sadness of death, tears fell from the anchor's eyes. He hurriedly opened the letter, but it was already too late. Tears streaked the paper, forming a coin-sized tear mark. The anchor looked closely, and there were countless such tear marks on the letter. It was just much lighter in color, and he couldn't help but choke up. This letter from Lin Chen must be filled with tears and blood, seeing the anchor not continuing. His wife Yin Nuan couldn't help but step forward and take the letter from his hand. Next to a coin-sized tear mark, countless tear marks of different sizes overlapped. Lin Chen softly called out Yin Nuan, thinking in anguish whether Lin Chen was almost unable to write the letter. Yin Nuan took over as the host and continued to read the letter. In fact, from the moment I met you, I have never truly resented anyone. There has always been light in my heart. Even if I'm not by your side, that light has never gone out. Nuan Nuan wrote this far. I am deeply grieved. I want to try hard to recall the stories between us. Maybe there are many that have not been recorded. But recently, my memory has worsened a bit. Many things I can't remember anymore. Even the past with you is starting to blur. The first thing I do every morning is to read these letters from beginning to end. I can't forget, and I dare not forget, but why is your appearance starting to become blurry? One day they held your photo in front of me. I was stunned for a long time. They said this is Nuan Nuan. In an instant, tears poured down. My beloved Nuan Nuan. What's wrong with me? How could I forget your appearance, just now? I asked them to put your photo at the head of my bed, and write Nuan Nuan next to it. Every morning when I wake up, the first thing I see is you, so you won't leave my mind. I also told them, if one day I forget the letters too, remember to read them to me, and if one day I'm gone, please take these letters with me. Oh, right, there are still many details. I need to write them all down. You don't like to eat overly sweet things, don't like to watch overly sad movies, and don't dare to stay home alone late at night. Tears streamed down Yin Nuan's face. She stood up. Countless questions surged in her heart. What kind of torment is Lin Chen going through? What is the story behind this letter? Originally, she thought Lin Chen would explain why he left. He would tell her what exactly happened. But this letter is full of sadness. Throughout the letter, she was trying to hold on to memories of the past. What exactly is wrong with Lin Chen? Yin Nuan's body went weak, and she was about to fall back. Yin Nuan's father quickly walked to his daughter's side and supported her. In these past few days, his daughter has been very strong. But now, after reading these letters, it's as if he has been crushed again, and just then, a loud rumble suddenly sounded. Everyone was startled. What's going on? Everyone looked towards the source of the sound. They saw a black object slowly rising from the edge of Rose Island. Soon, they realized that it wasn't just one place. The entire island, as well as the surrounding area, had black objects rising. It was only at this moment that Zhang and the others understood why, in the first episode, a 5-meter-high house could appear out of nowhere. This island was a powered machine. Before long, the black objects passed over the heads of the crowd enclosed in the center. Inside the first broadcast room, it became dark. Suddenly, countless lights turned on. The clear sky had turned into night. It's a big screen. The black object just now was a big screen. Someone from the camera crew immediately shouted. As soon as the words were spoken, countless stars appeared in the night sky. Yin Nuan raised her head and looked at the sky. She saw the stars beginning to change. Before long, 5 big characters appeared. Nuan Nuan, I miss you. Huang Lei and teacher He's eyes were filled with excitement. Finally, it had arrived. But the grandeur of it all was overwhelming. And they couldn't even imagine how it was created. Zichen, Zhang Xiaoxing, and others were in a daze at this moment. Zhang opened his mouth, pointing to the sky, unable to speak. Yin Nuan's hands trembled as the letter slipped from her grasp. She covered her face with her hands and looked at the sky. The stars, these are the stars. Nuan Nuan, why do you always look up at the sky? I'm looking for stars. It's getting harder to see stars in the city now. Why are you looking for stars? After my mom passed away, my dad told me that she became a star in the sky and would always watch over me. Nuan Nuan, I'm sorry, are you thinking about your mom again? I'm here, I will always be with you. Lin Chen's words echoed in her ears, and Yin Nuan couldn't help but be moved. Above the night sky, which star was created by Lin Chen for her? The live broadcast room was already in a frenzy. Such a scene could perhaps only be seen in a movie. Yet, it was happening in a variety show. With current technology, can this really be created? I remember it took 15 years to build the Palm Island in Dubai. It's incredible, I can't even imagine. On the set, Teacher Huang, Teacher He, what's going on? Zhang Xiaoxing finally recovered a bit and asked. You'll find out in a moment, Huang Lei said, muttering to himself. Can this project really be completed by one person's efforts? He looked at Teacher He, who nodded at him. The two of them became even more convinced of their previous speculation. Suddenly, a rumbling sound rang out again. Everyone quickly turned their heads. They saw a long platform rising in the sea of flowers. It looked to be about 400 to 500 meters long. At the end of this platform, there was a circular stage. On the stage, one could vaguely see fiery red roses. What is this? Hello, Yinhuan, a loud voice came from behind. Everyone snapped out of their daze and turned to look at the source of the voice. Over there, a group of people in formal attire were standing. The leader had a deep sense of sorrow on his face. Fu Ziyuan? Huang Lei and Teacher He couldn't. Upon hearing this, Yinhuan quickly took a step forward, her eyes filled with pleading. I want to know, how did Lin Chen leave? There, you will find the answers you seek. Fu Ziyuan pointed to the end of the platform. Without any hesitation, Yinhuan turned and rushed towards the steps. Nuan Nuan, her father's loud shout came from behind. Yinhuan stopped in her tracks and looked back at her father. What was that? After seeing clearly, tears streamed down Yinhuan's face uncontrollably. In her father's hands, there was a wedding dress. Nuan Nuan, you've suffered over these years. Dad understands that your heart can no longer accommodate anyone else. Today, Dad wants to personally hand you over to Lin Chen. After saying this, Yinhuan's father held the wedding dress and walked step by step to his daughter's side. Dad! Yinhuan's lips trembled slightly as she whispered. Over the years, her father's hatred for Lin Chen had penetrated deep into his bones. Every time Lin Chen was mentioned, he gritted his teeth. Even now, although the misunderstanding had been cleared up, Lin Chen no longer existed. How much determination did a father need to do this? Nuan Nuan, raise your hand. Yinhuan's father unzipped the wedding dress and placed it in front of her chest, smiling at his daughter. Yinhuan obediently nodded, then crouched down slightly and raised her hands. She remembered when she was a child. Her father played the roles of both a father and a mother. Every morning, he would say to her, Nuan Nuan, raise your hands. Now that she had grown up, her father had also aged. The wedding dress was draped over her from top to bottom. Yinhuan was still wearing clothes underneath, making the wedding dress look somewhat strange. But the people at the scene only felt that Yinhuan, at this moment, was stunningly beautiful. Zichen! Teacher, he called out softly. Zichen immediately understood, rubbed his eyes, walked to Yinhuan's side, and then helped her to the side. On the other side, Yinhuan's father adjusted his clothes and walked to the steps, looking ahead. At this moment, Fu Ziyuan, Huang Lei, Teacher He, Zhang Xiaoxing, and Peng Yucheng seemed to stand on both sides of the steps as if they were in sync without any communication. But at this moment, everyone was doing their own part. Soft music began to play. Zichen supported Yinhuan as they walked forward. Before long, he placed Yinhuan's hand in her father's hand. Nuan Nuan, from the day you were born, Dad has been thinking about this scene. Dad is really happy. His daughter is finally getting married. In the future, between husband and wife, there should be cooperation and mutual understanding. At this point, Yinhuan's father couldn't control his emotions. Lin Chen was no longer here. Where was the cooperation between husband and wife? Dad, we will. Yinhuan reached out and wiped her father's tears. Also, your mother has been looking forward to this day. Go and tell her. After saying this, Yinhuan's father looked at the sea of flowers beside him. Yinhuan held her father's hand and slowly walked over. She bent down and kissed the roses in front of her deeply. Mom, your daughter is getting married. As soon as this was said, Zichen couldn't help but choke up. Yinhuan's sister was so pitiful. Her mother had passed away when she was young, and now Lin Chen had also left her. The people around them all lowered their heads, their eyes turning red. Yinhuan stood up and looked at her father, a gentle smile appearing on her lips. Dad, I'm really happy and blessed. Yinhuan's father nodded continuously and then led his daughter back to the steps. 1 step, 2 steps, a total of 10 steps. Yinhuan's father walked very slowly but with determination. Finally, he stepped onto the platform. He looked at his daughter, a faint smile on his face, and said softly, Go. Then he let go of her hand. Dad, I love you. With that, Yinhuan turned around and walked towards the circular stage. At first, she walked very slowly. After a while, her pace quickened. Bang! The screen above suddenly opened up. Countless rose petals poured down. Bang! 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 As Yinhuan ran faster and faster, more and more petals fell. They intertwined and danced in the air. The entire scene turned into a fiery red. It must have been planned by Lin Chen a long time ago to hold the wedding here with Yinhuan. It's a pity. If only Lin Chen were still here. On the set, The camera crew all looked at Director Zhang. Yinwan had already run far away. Should they follow her? How should the program be filmed if they didn't follow her? Director Zhang had never expected this situation. Fu Ziyuan hadn't told him about the scale of this wedding. At this moment, Director Zhang walked to Fu Ziyuan's side and asked softly, "What should we do?" "Let's go," Fu Ziyuan smiled and responded. "Continue filming the program and bring everyone along." As soon as he finished speaking, a dozen or so off-road vehicles drove over. Fu Ziyuan helped Yinwan's father into one of the vehicles and then said to the others, "Everyone get on the cars. Let's bear witness to this." Hearing this, everyone didn't hesitate and quickly got into the vehicles. The drone takes off, the footage must not be interrupted. Everyone else pack up, then get in the car. Director Zhang shouted as he helped everyone pack up the equipment. On the other side, countless scenes flashed through Yinwan's mind like a movie. She remembered them all. When she was young, her father took her to the welfare home. The first person she saw was Lin Chen. This little boy was completely different from the others. It seemed like the whole world had nothing to do with him. She couldn't help but go up to him and play with him. Later, when she transferred schools, she saw someone bullying someone in front of her. At that time, she felt that this person was familiar, so she stepped forward to stop it. These memories, Yinwan stopped in her tracks, looking ahead in disbelief. Tears instantly filled her eyes. She wiped them away. She carefully looked through the petals. It was indeed Lin Chen. This face had already been deeply engraved in her mind. She couldn't possibly be mistaken. "Lin Chen!" Yinwan shouted. Tears filled her eyes again. The scene in front of her began to blur again. She ran forward as if she were crazy. The person she had longed for had finally appeared. She was getting closer. She was about to get close. Yinwan opened her arms and pounced forward. She wanted to embrace Lin Chen tightly. "What have you been through all these years?" But Yinwan pounced into thin air. She turned around in astonishment. Lin Chen still maintained that posture, reaching out in front of him. Yinwan wiped her tears again, and her vision became clear. She realized that the Lin Chen in front of her was just a 3D projection. It turns out that everything was an illusion. Yinwan took a deep breath and calmed herself. Today is a good day with Lin Chen, she can't cry. Immediately, Yinwan showed her smile and slowly walked to stand beside Lin Chen. Below the stage, everyone had arrived. Fu Ziyuan was the first to get off the car, running up with Yinwan's father. Behind him, Director Zhang and the 5-member group followed closely. They all went up to the stage. Everyone's eyes were moist again. In the center of the stage, Yinwan's 5 fingers lightly touched Lin Chen's hand. She looked at everyone, her face full of happiness. "No crying allowed," Fu Ziyuan shouted lowly at everyone. Then, he quickly walked to the 2 people and shouted loudly, "Mr. Lin Chen, do you want to marry this beautiful lady next to you?" The Lin Chen on stage showed a brilliant smile, then turned to look at the person next to him. In the sky, there came an empty voice, "I do." Hearing this voice, Fu Ziyuan's figure suddenly shook. He lowered his head, his shoulders trembling. Finally, he raised his head again, his eyes red as he looked at Yinwan. "Ms. Yinwan, do you want to marry this handsome man next to you? Whether in poverty or wealth, whether in health or sickness, to have and to hold." Yinwan faced Lin Chen next to her. She reached out and gently touched his face. "I do." "Exchange rings," Fu Ziyuan continued to shout. It was at this moment that a platform slowly rose in front of Yinwan. After stopping, the wooden board automatically opened. Inside, there was an exquisite wooden box containing 2 rings. These 2 rings were very special, not 2 independent rings, but intertwined. These were personally designed by Lin Chen. At that time, he sent me the design and asked me to find a factory to make them. The rings are a pair, 2 rings intertwined, symbolizing 2 people staying together for life. Lin Chen didn't name this pair of rings. He once said, "In the future, let you name them." Fu Ziyuan said softly. And after hearing this, Yinwan picked up the rings, found the buckle, took the smaller one out, and put it on the ring finger of her left hand. Then, she put the remaining ring into the delicate box on the table and held it tightly in her hand. "Let's call it Together Forever." Yinwan looked at Fu Ziyuan with a sweet smile. After doing all this, Fu Ziyuan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and said to Yinwan, "Please forgive my selfishness, I had to do these things." Yinwan shook her head with a smile and said, "I am very happy and content." In her heart, marrying Lin Chen was her lifelong wish. On the other side, at the edge of the stage, Yinwan's father looked at the flying petals, his mouth showing a gentle expression like that of his daughter. He reached out and murmured, "Yu Yao, can you see it? Our daughter is getting married." The 5 of them covered their mouths, forcing themselves not to cry out. This scene before their eyes was the most touching love in the world. In the live broadcast room, the barrage was already scrolling, wishing Lin Chen and Yin Wan a lifetime of happiness and harmony. May you be together forever, loving each other for a lifetime. Happy honeymoon, sweet and romantic. A loving couple, together forever. On the set, including the drones, all the cameras were aimed at the center of the stage. Yin Wan took the initiative to look at the camera, waving the ring in her hand. She knew that the entire Yihui company must be watching her before the live broadcast. Sister Yin Wan, congratulations! Zichen walked up and gave Yin Wan a big hug. Then, Zhang Xiaoxing and Pang Yuchang also came forward to congratulate her. However, Huang Lei and teacher he kept staring at Fu Ziyuan. That phone call. Fu Ziyuan asked them to shoot the 4th episode on Rose Island and to skip the previous few letters and read the 9th letter directly. Finally, he asked them to help convey Yin Wan's father's blessings to his daughter. Each of these 3 requests seemed unusual. Huang Lei and the others hesitated for a long time, but finally agreed. But why did he do this? Now that the wedding is over, Huang Lei and the others are waiting for Fu Ziyuan's answer. He said today that the answer is here. Fu Ziyuan noticed their gaze and gestured for them to come over. Lin Chen couldn't wait any longer. It was time to tell them the truth. Huang Lei and teacher he were suddenly nervous. After filming the 4th episode, would they finally face the real answer? Uncle Lin, please come over too, Fu Ziyuan shouted to the other side. Lin Chen had always respected Yin Wan's father and couldn't neglect him. Yin Wan's father hesitated for a moment and then walked over as Fu Ziyuan had suggested. Director Zhang, focus the camera on me. After everything was ready, Fu Ziyuan shouted loudly. Soon, from various angles, the cameras were all focused on him. Including Yin Wan, everyone realized that Fu Ziyuan had something to say, and it must be related to Lin Chen. All eyes were on Fu Ziyuan. Fu Ziyuan avoided everyone's gaze, faced the camera, and said firmly, actually, there's a misunderstanding. Lin Chen is not dead. Boom! Upon hearing this, Yin Wan almost fell over, but then her eyes burst with intense light, staring at Fu Ziyuan without blinking. It's just that he's no different from being dead now. Just 2 days ago, he had forgotten everyone and his physical functions were almost lost. I really have no other choice now. As he said this, Yin Wan rushed forward, grabbed Fu Ziyuan's shoulder, and almost shouted, where is he now? Fu Ziyuan smiled bitterly and looked at the ground. Just then, the Lin Chen on the stage suddenly disappeared. Immediately, the floor began to open, and a hospital bed was pushed up. Yin Wan, how could Lin Chen be absent from your wedding? Fu Ziyuan trembled as he spoke. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. Was this Lin Chen? Yin Wan's mouth was slightly open, trembling all over, and took a step by step to move over. On the sickbed, Lin Chen was full of tubes, thin as a rail, completely different from the person in the previous video. Lin Chen. Yin Wan knelt by the bed, calling softly. At this moment, the world became quiet again, leaving only the beloved in front of her. Fu Ziyuan beside him, with strong hope in his eyes, stared tightly at Lin Chen on the sickbed. Lin Chen, it's me, Wan, I'm here to see you. Lin Chen, open your eyes, just one look. Yin Wan kept calling, but Lin Chen showed no response. Yin Wan suddenly turned around and asked in a cold tone, what's wrong with him? Fu Ziyuan's eyes were full of disappointment, and he sighed in response. Yin Wan, 7 years ago, Lin Chen started this project. After it took shape, he went to find you. He said he wanted to find the light in his life. We laughed at him for being sentimental at the time. With his conditions, he could find any girl, but he kept talking about Yin Wan every day. He just smiled and said nothing, then packed up and left. During this time, we only contacted through phone and email. But 5 years ago, Lin Chen returned here. He said he had been having headaches recently, and his memory was getting worse. He went to the hospital, but they couldn't find anything wrong. We immediately gave him a comprehensive examination. But during this time, Lin Chen fell into a deep coma. This sleep lasted for a year. Hearing this, Yin Wan kept hitting her head. It turned out that the reason Lin Chen left her was like this. At that time, she had been hating him. Yin Wan's father also sobbed softly. Lin Chen's abandonment of Yin Wan had always been a thorn in his heart. At this moment, it was untied, and he felt so heartbroken that he couldn't breathe. This child must have been unable to bear it and returned to Rose Island. But even so, he didn't want Yin Wan to worry. Zichen, Zhang Xiaoxing, and Pang Yuchang were quietly wiping away tears on the side. Only Huang Lei and teacher he always had a look of doubt on their faces. According to Fu Ziyuan, Lin Chen returned here because he couldn't get treatment outside. But it didn't look like there was a hospital here. Huang Lei and teacher he looked at each other, and their previous speculations became more certain. A year later, after everyone's day and night efforts, Lin Chen finally woke up. I remember. The first thing he said when he woke up was to ask us the time. We couldn't hide it at all, so we had to tell him the truth. Lin Chen was stunned. He pulled out the tubes on his body and wanted to rush out, but he had been lying down for a year. His body was extremely weak. He just got up and fell to the ground. There was no way. We could only give him a sedative. When he said this, Fu Ziyuan's voice became trembling, as if he recalled a bad memory. Yinhuan pressed her face against Lin Chen's face. At that time, you wanted to come and see me, to see our child, right? Lin Chen fainted again. But this time, he woke up that night. I remember that day. All the staff were guarding him, fearing that he would lose control again. Because, without these instruments, he couldn't survive for long. But Lin Chen seemed extremely calm, and he even smiled at us. At that moment, we understood that Lin Chen had come back. The Lin Chen we were all proud of, he had come back. After that, he calmly said 4 words. Jiangcheng, Yinhuan. We had heard of this name, and we knew what it represented. Only then did we realize that he had found you. Without hesitation, we immediately applied and sent people to find you. After finding you, we realized how bad your situation was at that time. Lin Chen knew and cried bitterly, blaming himself. He immediately said he wanted to find you. Of course, we didn't allow it. But who could really stop him? He is the creator here. His prestige is unmatched. There was no way. We can only move the entire ward to Jiangcheng. You should know what happened after that. After listening, Yinhuan reached out and touched Lin Chen's face, asking, what disease does Lin Chen have? It's a terminal illness, currently incurable, Fu Ziyuan said. Lin Chen's illness is caused by cerebellar atrophy, a situation that has not been encountered in the world. He is slowly losing his physical functions and memory, and what else? Yinhuan raised her head. And he experiences intense pain in his head every day, enduring constant torment. Ah, Yinhuan softly exclaimed, then asked in a mournful voice, how much pain is he in? If it were an ordinary person, they would probably be driven to suicide by this pain, Fu Ziyuan replied, looking at the lying Lin Chen. He said it's like 10,000 needles stabbing his head every day. We tried various methods, and they initially worked. But over time, Lin Chen developed a tolerance, and the pain could not be eradicated. Hearing this, Yinhuan's heart bled. Has Lin Chen been living like this for these years? Losing physical functions while memory fades, and enduring inhuman agony. How did he manage to hold on until now? What about the starry sky that Director Yang mentioned earlier? Zichen couldn't help but speak. Fu Ziyuan looked at everyone. That's right. At that time, while enduring intense pain, Lin Chen was also directing Director Yang and the others. His physical condition deteriorated significantly during those months. We all tried to persuade him, but how could we persuade him? Lin Chen said it was his debt to you that he had to repay. He also said that if he didn't do it now, it would be too late. This is what Yinhuan wished for. After hearing this, everyone felt a sense of sorrow. Zichen was particularly choked up. What kind of state was that? Lin Chen, with tubes all over his body, holding a paintbrush every day, repeatedly making revisions, and also guiding the art illustration of beautiful country. Even an ordinary person would be exhausted. Yet Lin Chen, with his injured body, persisted. All for the sake of fulfilling Yinhuan's dream. Everyone looked at Yinhuan, who was currently resting her head on Lin Chen's chest, feeling his faint heartbeat. Yinhuan, he's still alive, but he could leave at any time, Fu Ziyuan said. So are you letting him see me for the last time? No, there is still hope. Hope. Yinhuan suddenly raised her head. What hope? Can Lin Chen wake up again? Fu Ziyuan nodded, then said, Yinhuan, can you listen to a story from me? Without waiting for Yinhuan's response, Fu Ziyuan continued, after Lin Chen returned, our team began to research this disease. At that time, everyone held a pessimistic attitude, thinking that Lin Chen could at most last for half a year. His cerebellar atrophy was too severe, but a miracle happened. He erupted with a strong will to live. He actually managed to hold on. In the end, there were even signs of improvement. At that time, all of us were incredulous. But the good times didn't last. Soon after, his condition continued to deteriorate, and his memory declined severely. At this point, Yinhuan's father's body began to weaken. 3 generations of the Yin family. On his side, Yu Yao passed away due to illness. On his daughter's side, Lin Chen had been fighting against the disease. And Numo almost left the mortal world. Why did he have to treat his own family like this? What happened later? How did Lin Chen manage to pull through? Zhang Xiaoxing's eyes were red, and he couldn't help but ask. Later. Fu Ziyuan continued. Later, it was about half a year later. At that time, Lin Chen was still supported by a strong will. But one morning, when we went to see Lin Chen, we found that his eyes were vacant, as if he had already forgotten us. We were terrified and quickly conducted various examinations. We found that Lin Chen's cerebellum had shrunk significantly that night, and it continued to shrink. Do you know why? After Fu Ziyuan finished speaking, even the strong and resolute man couldn't help but choke up. It's because on that day, he forgot about Yin Wan, he lost his will to live. We called out to him, shouted at him, but it had no effect. But when we said, Yin Wan is still waiting for you, Lin Chen's eyes suddenly widened, and his memories slowly began to return. But then, the intense pain engulfed him once again. That's when we understood. The harder Lin Chen tried to remember you, the more intense his pain became. But Yin Wan, at that moment, I actually wished he could feel even more pain. Because remembering you was his hope to keep on living. Beside the sickbed, Yin Wan wanted to cry but couldn't. She had shed too many tears these days. She opened her mouth, and a hoarse sound came out of her throat. Hua! Hua! Fu Ziyuan spoke again. At that time, we wanted to bring you here, but Lin Chen disagreed. He said it's better for you to come with resentment than to watch him die in pain. Of course, we disagreed. He is the founder here. The former Lin Chen led the people here and achieved so many miracles, but he was forcing us to keep the truth from you. After that, Lin Chen started writing letters. They were called letters, but they were actually farewell letters. At first, we thought your name still had some use. Slowly, we could only read the letters to him for a reaction. Later, even that didn't work, and his bodily functions continued to deteriorate. At that time, I almost couldn't bear it and wanted to find you. Then one day, by chance, Lin Chen himself held the letters, tears streaming down his face. He remembered again. Only when he remembered you could he have the will to live. So, under Lin Chen's arrangement, we copied the letters and placed them by his bedside. Every time he woke up, the first thing he saw was the letters. That's how he persisted until now. Yin Wan, these letters are farewell letters, but also love letters for you. They are also the medicine for Lin Chen's illness. Hearing this, Huang Lei and teacher he couldn't think about the questions anymore. They turned their heads and choked up along with Zi Chen and the others. It turned out that Lin Chen had endured such pain. His love for Yin Wan had penetrated deep into his bones. Lin Chen. Yin Wan leaned over and called out to Lin Chen's ear, I'm sorry. I'm late. From now on, I won't let you forget me again. Today is our big day, open your eyes and see, am I beautiful? Fu Ziyuan once again stared at Lin Chen intently, hoping for him to regain consciousness. This was Lin Chen's only hope. If Lin Chen didn't respond this time, he would soon leave this world for real. Huang Lei understood, teacher he understood, and Director Zhang understood. They also looked at Lin Chen, hoping for a miracle. Yin Wan's father, Zi Chen, Zhang Xiaoxing, and Peng Yuchan, everyone understood. They all looked at Lin Chen, their eyes filled with hope. Turn off all the cameras, Director Zhang shouted with tears in his eyes. He had wanted to turn them off when Lin Chen came out. The scene was too shocking, and Fu Ziyuan's words were too moving. Director Zhang was momentarily stunned and plunged into deep sorrow. Don't turn them off. Keep broadcasting. Fu Ziyuan turned to Director Zhang and bowed deeply. Lin Chen's story should be known to everyone. After speaking, he continued to stare at Lin Chen. Inside the live broadcast room, the barrage had filled the entire screen. Tears, I really didn't expect Lin Chen to be like this now. This Lin Chen is completely different from before, and we can't even find his previous shadow. I never thought a person could become so thin. Does Lin Chen only weigh 60 pounds now? Before long, the people in front of the live broadcast were all drawn in by a single sentence. Let's all pray for Lin Chen together. The barrage once again went crazy. Prayer, palms together. Lin Chen, open your eyes, everyone is waiting for you. Bless. Please open your eyes. Yi Hui Building. Under the leadership of Director Yang, everyone in the company gathered to watch the Longing Six. In addition, many people from various corners of Jiangcheng also gathered here. Yan Ming widened his eyes. He never expected that the man he admired was already terminally ill. In the videos they communicated in, his smile was so bright. How could this be possible? Everyone present had tears in their eyes. Open your eyes, Lin Chen. Director Yang shouted. Suddenly, everyone shouted together, open your eyes, Lin Chen. Anshin Welfare Institute. Aunt Zhang had already cried her eyes out. She knew that Lin Chen was terminally ill, but she never knew the pain he was enduring. Now, her heart really ached. Aunt Zhang covered her chest and started coughing violently. Aunt Zhang! Aunt Zhang! The children saw her condition and hurriedly called out. Aunt Zhang turned her head, and the little angels in front of her slowly transformed into the appearance of Lin Chen when he was young. Aunt Zhang wiped away her tears and shouted loudly to the children, cheer for brother Lin Chen, okay? Okay! As soon as the words were spoken, a loud voice echoed in the Welfare Institute. Brother Lin Chen, come on! Jiangcheng Kindergarten. The little girl blinked her big eyes and looked at her teacher. Teacher, why are you crying? Mummy is very well behaved and won't cause trouble. Li Ruoying put down her phone and picked up the little girl. It's not about Mummy, the teacher got sand in her eyes. On the stage, Yin Wan was still softly speaking in Lin Chen's ear, but his tightly closed eyes remained shut. Zichen tightly held his hand, his nails embedded in the flesh, silently chanting "Come on" in his heart. Fu Ziyuan became more and more nervous. Was he too late in the end? He lowered his head, letting tears fall continuously to the floor. The iron-blooded man in the eyes of others was now broken-hearted. Suddenly, he raised his head. He quickly walked to Lin Chen and shouted loudly, "Lin Chen, when we met in our youth, you were full of spirit. Why are you willing to lie on a sickbed today? How many brothers, how many people you have helped, are hoping for you to stand up again? The new world order you want is about to be realized. Aren't you going to take a look? Get up for me. Get up for me. I looked down on you." Fu Ziyuan's eyes were red, looking like a madman. The people behind him quickly rushed forward and held him back. "Letter!" Fu Ziyuan roared. "Bring me the letter." Immediately, someone brought a stack of letters over. After taking them, Fu Ziyuan quickly walked to Yin Wan. Yin Wan read the letter to him. Yin Wan raised her head and quickly opened the letter. "Nuan Nuan. See, words, like, face." As soon as she spoke, Yin Wan choked up. At this moment, she truly understood. When Lin Chen wrote these letters, he was enduring so much. It didn't take long before one letter was about to be finished. But Lin Chen still had no reaction. Yin Wan felt hopeless. Her hands trembling, she opened the second letter. Just then, Zichen's excited voice rang out. "Lin Chen is reacting, Lin Chen is reacting." It was seen that Lin Chen lying on the sickbed, his eyelashes were trembling slightly. 2 clear tears had flowed from the corners of his eyes. Yin Wan's pupils contracted. She threw away the letter in her hand and once again approached Lin Chen's ear. "Lin Chen, it's me, Nuan Nuan." With Yin Wan's voice, tears flowed from Lin Chen's eyes again. It was at this moment. The medical equipment next to it suddenly emitted a piercing alarm. Immediately, in the shocked gaze of everyone, the floor on the other side of Lin Chen's bed quickly opened. Then, 4 or 5 doctors in white coats rushed out. Without saying a word, they pulled Yin Wan aside and stood next to the bed. Immediately, the floor began to slowly descend again. Before long, the entire stage returned to its original state, as if the previous scene had been a dream. "Lin Chen!" Yin Wan cried out in anguish. What did that piercing sound represent? She didn't even have time to think. Yin Wan, Fu Ziyuan stepped forward, tears still in his eyes. Wait! They were the doctors who had been treating Lin Chen. Give them some time after he fell into a complete coma. This is the first time Lin Chen has reacted to the outside world after falling into a complete coma. Thank you. Upon hearing this, Yin Wan quieted down, and the others also breathed a sigh of relief. Teacher Huang, I don't know how long we have to wait. Take everyone to the seaside, don't delay the recording. Fu Ziyuan calmed down a lot and said to Huang Lei. The latter shook his head and said, No, we'll stay here, we won't go anywhere. Yes, we're not leaving, teacher, he also said. Fu Ziyuan, none of the members of the Longning 6 team are leaving. Not far away, Director Zhang shouted loudly. We're not leaving, we're waiting here for Lin Chen. At this moment, Zichen, Zhang Xiaoxing, and Pang Yuchang also joined in the shouting. Inside the studio. It's okay, we won't leave. Yes, we'll wait together. Whenever Lin Chen gets better, I'll see it. I want to see Lin Chen appear. He will definitely get better. Praying. Time passed. Half an hour flew by. The people in the studio did not decrease at all, but rather showed signs of increasing. The barrage was full of prayers and folded hands. Many people who accidentally entered the livestream quickly asked what had happened. But after a second, their questions were pushed off the screen. 1 hour later, at the shooting scene, everyone felt the floor beneath their feet slightly trembling. Before long, the floor at Lin Chen's bed position opened again. Lin Chen was pushed out once more. This time, his face was noticeably rosier. The tubes on his body had also been removed. He looked as if he were just sleeping. And there were 2 more doctors beside him. Lin Chen! Yin Wan called out in surprise and quickly went forward. She couldn't bear to be separated from Lin Chen for every second. The most dangerous moment has passed, he can hold on for a while longer, a male doctor with a square face, wearing glasses, and a gentle voice said beside him. Fu Ziyuan breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this, and gratefully looked at Yin Wan, then turned to the doctor and asked, Dr. Zhou, what is Lin Chen's current condition? Upon hearing this, everyone perked up and listened carefully. Dr. Zhou's eyes flashed with a hint of reluctance, then he said, Lin Chen's condition has temporarily stabilized. He can now hear you all talking. But his memory has not recovered, otherwise, he should have woken up by now. Fu Ziyuan, what you did only succeeded halfway. After saying this, Dr. Zhou closed his eyes slightly and let out a sigh. He had been treating Lin Chen for 5 years. In these 5 years, only he could slightly feel what Lin Chen had been through. Forcing the brain to regain its vitality, forcing it to remember certain things. This kind of pain was not something an ordinary person could endure. But Lin Chen did, and endured it for 4 years. Sometimes, he even hoped that Lin Chen would just sleep forever. Doctor, what should I do? Suddenly, Yin Wan stood up and asked Dr. Zhou decisively. Fu Ziyuan wouldn't have called him over for something so simple. There must be a way to save Lin Chen. Delay. I told Fu Ziyuan to do everything possible to delay, Dr. Zhou answered very quickly. What you need to do now is to restore his memory, ignite his will to survive, and hold on until the day we succeed. The day of success? These words stirred everyone. What does it mean? Could Lin Chen still recover? Dr. Zhou, can Lin Chen survive? Mr. Yi hurriedly asked. He can. We have been researching this disease for 5 years, and we have made some progress, but it still needs time to develop a special medicine. How long? This was Yin Wan's question, and her eyes were full of determination. I can't guarantee, but it will take at least 3 years. Everyone gasped at this. Although they were not doctors, looking at Lin Chen's condition, it was uncertain whether he could even last a month, let alone 3 years. Okay, I understand. I will make sure of it. Yin Wan nodded firmly. Seeing Yin Wan like this, everyone felt uneasy. Yin Wan seemed calm now, but they had witnessed her breakdown several times. If this happened again, how would Yin Wan cope? No one dared to think about it. Dr. Zhou sighed inwardly. He had been treating Lin Chen for 5 years and knew that this was an impossible task. Lin Chen was already at death's door. Now, being alive was already a miracle. As a last resort, they could only use the final method. But the risk was enormous. Also, Dr. Zhou waved his hand, and after a tremor, a wheelchair appeared on the floor. The wheelchair was obviously custom-made and covered with straps. This is our latest development. The wheelchair can recline and sit, and when the straps are secured, it can protect the body from impact. Dr. Zhou's words were calm, as if he were mentioning something insignificant. But Fu Ziyuan knew. For this wheelchair, the entire underground research facility had been working for nearly 3 years. All for this moment. When Lin Chen was at death's door, he could go out and see. When a person sat in this wheelchair, they could hardly feel any bumps, no matter how rough the road was. Seeing this wheelchair, Mr. Ye's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Did this mean they could take Lin Chen home? Mumu could finally see her long-awaited father. But his expression quickly dimmed. Lin Chen definitely wouldn't want his daughter to see him like this. Dr. Zhou continued to explain, if Lin Chen stays here, even with Yin Wan, he probably won't make it through the year. Take him to the places he used to stay, maybe there will be some unexpected gains. Hearing this, Fu Ziyuan nodded. Then he walked to Lin Chen and Yin Wan, and with an apologetic tone, said, I'm sorry, this show was all my idea. Lin Chen didn't want you to know. Yin Wan smiled gently and looked at Lin Chen, shaking her head slightly. Seeing this, Fu Ziyuan looked at Director Zhang and continued, Director Zhang, I lured you to this island, and I also placed those letters. Director Zhang, like Yin Wan, shook his head slightly. Now, these things were no longer important. What mattered was how long Lin Chen could live. Could he hold on until the special medicine was available? Seeing this, Fu Ziyuan walked to Huang Lei's side. He whispered a few words to him, and Huang Lei's face changed. Professor Huang, please, I must do this. This is also the second reason I lured you here. After hearing this, Huang Lei smiled and said, we need to discuss this and go back. Fu Ziyuan did not continue to press. He returned to Yin Wan's side, bent down, and gently lifted Lin Chen. With Yin Wan's support, he placed Lin Chen in the wheelchair. It was at this moment that the large screen above their heads slowly opened and retracted to the sides. Soon after, the sound of engines roared, and 2 helicopters appeared in the sky. Let's go. We'll take Lin Chen back to Jiang City, where there is also a medical room. The kid said that if he ever left, he wanted to be buried there. After hearing this, Yin Wan and his father didn't hesitate at all and followed Fu Ziyuan onto the plane. With this, the 4th episode of Longing 6 comes to an end. After Teacher He finished his closing remarks, he couldn't wait to walk over to Huang Lei and ask, what did Fu Ziyuan say to you just now? He said he hopes the show can adjust its schedule, airing 2 or 3 times a week. What does that mean? Teacher He was a bit puzzled. He said that before Lin Chen left, he wanted the whole world to know what kind of person Lin Chen really is. He wants the people of China to be proud of Lin Chen. He said it's something he must do. 3 hours later, the plane landed at a private airport in Zhengchang. Yin Wan, dressed in a wedding gown, slowly pushed Lin Chen down the stairs. His face was peaceful, as if he were just sleeping. Lin Chen, we're home. Yin Wan's father came down from another plane and walked to his daughter's side. Looking at Lin Chen in this state, his heart ached. How sad would Mumu be if she saw her father like this? Thinking of this, Yin Wan's father shook his head abruptly and slapped himself. What was he thinking about? At this point, he should only be concerned about his granddaughter. Before long, a boxy vehicle about 3 meters high drove into the airport and soon arrived in front of everyone. Uncle and Fu Ziyuan smiled. Let's go to the Anshin Welfare Institute first. With Yin Wan here, Lin Chen should be able to remember something. Yin Wan's father nodded and said, okay. Everyone got into the car, the engine roared, and the vehicle moved steadily forward. Anshin Welfare Institute. Over there, and there, hang up the lanterns. What about the red carpet? Is it not ready yet? Aunt Zhang was sweating profusely, constantly directing. Aunt Zhang, a staff member walked over and shouted, what's wrong? There's a little more to do. The staff member pointed to the pile of colored strips and lanterns not far away. How about putting these decorations behind the Welfare Institute? Aunt Zhang frowned, thought for a moment, and responded, no, don't affect the children in the back. With that, Aunt Zhang looked at the house in front of her and fell into thought. 27 years ago, she had just turned 30, the prime of her life. But she devoted all her energy to the children in the Welfare Institute. She had no time for her personal life. By the age of 30, she hadn't even had a proper relationship. At that time, Aunt Zhang remembered. Her parents often urged her and arranged many blind dates for her. They often advised her to give up this job. Each time, she made various excuses and stood up her suitors. And she persisted in the Welfare Institute. The work at the Welfare Institute was low-paying and demanding, and there was a severe shortage of manpower. And with these poor children, how could she bear to leave? Sometimes she also thought that she would spend her whole life with these children. One night, it was her shift. Suddenly, there was a violent knocking at the door. She hurried out to investigate. But when she came out, there was no one outside the door. Under the streetlight, there was only a cardboard box, lonely at the door. She walked up. Inside was a baby, a newborn baby. Wrinkled skin, eyes not even open. But her first reaction was that this was a baby girl abandoned by her family. Thinking of this, her heart began to ache. How many abandoned baby girls were there in the Welfare Institute? She opened the door and gently picked up the box, walking back into the Welfare Institute. Then she placed the box on the table. It was at this moment that the child in the box suddenly began to cry loudly. Aunt Zhang knew. The child was hungry at this time. In the Welfare Institute, there was always powdered milk on hand. Before long, she brought the bottle to the baby's mouth. The little one was in great shape. Seeing the bottle, she kept shaking her head. Then, he took a sip and started drinking with relish. At that moment, he opened the swaddle and found out that it was a boy. Moreover, there was a note inside the swaddle. Lin Chen, April 11, 1995. She felt a pang in her heart at that moment, wondering if the child had any problems. Generally, the probability of a boy being abandoned is very low. Those who are abandoned are usually infants with physical disabilities or incurable illnesses. She carefully checked and finally breathed a sigh of relief. The baby in front of her named Lin Chen was very healthy. Soon, 2 years passed. She had been taking care of Lin Chen attentively. However, she found that the child seemed unable to speak. He couldn't even pronounce simple bisyllabic words. Aunt Zhang's heart ached even more. Since then, she almost lived in the welfare home, taking care of Lin Chen. Lin Chen was also very sensible, or rather, heartbreakingly sensible. Apart from not being able to call people, he never fought with other children. When the welfare home distributed candies, he would even save them and keep them for himself. But because he couldn't speak, the children in the welfare home didn't want to play with him. Lin Chen became more and more isolated, and in the end, he didn't even smile. Fortunately, when he was 6 years old, Yin Wan came. Recalling this, Aunt Zhang couldn't help but shed tears. This poor child is now married, and she herself has become the director of the welfare home. That year, the welfare home underwent major construction. The construction workers said that the building in front of them was very different from the one in the blueprint and suggested demolishing and rebuilding it. There were also many people in the welfare home who agreed. It was she who went against the tide and saved this small building. Here, it bore the initial traces of Lin Chen's life. Aunt Zhang, everything is ready, take a look. Inside the small building, the little angels were all smiling and calling out to Aunt Zhang. Aunt Zhang looked up. The small building was already covered in red. At the entrance, a red carpet led directly into the house. Aunt Zhang nodded and forced a smile. Rest for a while, they will be here soon. Aunt Zhang, we're not tired, we've been waiting for this day for a long time. A voice called out. Yes, when Lin Chen was still in the welfare home, he often talked to them about Yin Wan. In their eyes, Yin Wan was the princess in a fairy tale. And now, it's the best ending in the story. They firmly believe that brother Lin Chen will definitely recover and live a happy life with sister Yin Wan. Hearing this, Aunt Zhang also showed a relieved smile on her face. But unlike this group of youthful children, there was always a hint of unerasable sadness in her eyes. It was so difficult to cure Lin Chen's illness. 2 hours later, Aunt Zhang received a phone call. Children, Lin Chen is coming. Aunt Zhang shouted. Are you ready? Do you know what to do? Just be happy. Immediately, at least 300 young people supported each other and came to the entrance. Their eyes were full of anticipation. The prince and princess are coming back. Not long after, a van arrived. Soon, the back door opened. Yin Wan pushed Lin Chen into view of the crowd. Brother Lin Chen, sister Yin Wan, welcome home. They shouted, then released the balloons in unison. Previously, during the first phase of the program, Yin Wan had seen this group of young people on TV. At that time, she still harbored resentment and didn't pay much attention. At this moment, in the midst of it all, most of these young people had physical disabilities. Yet, they exuded a positive and optimistic attitude towards life. Suddenly, an unknown force filled Yin Wan's heart. Lin Chen will definitely hold on. The wheelchair was pushed down. Fu Ziyuan and Yin Wan's father also came down. Lin Chen, do you remember this place? This is your home. Yin Wan leaned close to Lin Chen's ear and called softly. At this moment, Aunt Zhang had already stepped forward. Looking at Lin Chen in front of her, she was on the verge of collapse. She hadn't seen Lin Chen for 5 years. She couldn't cry. Aunt Zhang forced herself to hold back and softly called out, Child, I am Aunt Zhang. But Lin Chen in front of her still did not respond. 2 tears slid from the corners of Aunt Zhang's eyes. She quickly wiped away the tears and then smiled. Everyone, don't stand here, let's go inside. Okay. Yin Wan nodded and then bent down. Lin Chen, we're going home. With that, she pushed Lin Chen towards the Peace and Welfare Institute, slowly approaching. At that moment, the former little angels rushed up and lifted the train of Yin Wan's wedding dress. Yin Wan, today is your and Lin Chen's happy day. Aunt Zhang is so happy. Can Aunt Zhang do your makeup for you? With that, a few more little angels brought over a dressing table and a chair. Yin Wan, in the future, you should consider the Welfare Institute as your home. Aunt Zhang doesn't have children, so if you're willing, you can consider me as your mother. Yin Wan's nose suddenly tingled, then she handed Lin Chen to her father and walked over to the dressing table to sit down. Aunt Zhang removed Yin Wan's headpiece, then picked up a comb and gently started to comb. And Yin Wan, tears streaming down her face. After about 10 minutes, Aunt Zhang put the headpiece back on Yin Wan and then smiled. Silly child, you should be happy today. Nearby, the group of little angels had already started shouting loudly. Sister Yin Wan looks so beautiful. Sister Yin Wan, happy wedding day. Yin Wan looked at this group of young people full of sunshine. Their positive attitude deeply infected everyone present. She stood up, wiped away her tears, and smiled. The gloom of these days was almost swept away at this moment. Let's go home, Yin Wan shouted, then took Lin Chen from her father's hands. Her face was filled with happiness. Walking down the red carpet, Yin Wan took Lin Chen straight to his room. As soon as she opened the door, the paper roses hanging there began to sway. Even though she had been here once before, Yin Wan's heart was still stirred. Lin Chen, this is the rose you folded for me. In your letter, you said that this little thing was unexpectedly difficult. Actually, you don't know, I'm really good at handicrafts. If I had known at the time, I would have definitely taught you. Yin Wan smiled and murmured. Then she pushed Lin Chen to the edge of the bed and looked at the wall. Look, this is my name, Wan Wan. You once said that you wanted to put my name by the bed. Wake up to see it every day. I didn't expect you really did it. Fu Ziyuan silently followed behind, his eyes always on Lin Chen. But he was disappointed. Lin Chen had no reaction at all. Let them stay here for a while, Aunt Zhang said softly. At her words, everyone retreated, closed the door, and left the space to Lin Chen and Yin Wan. After the door was closed, the atmosphere suddenly became strange, and everyone fell silent. Aunt Zhang's shoulders trembled, tears gushed out, and her body softened. Aunt Zhang. Fu Ziyuan lightly called out, supporting Aunt Zhang. Why didn't you bring Lin Chen earlier? Aunt Zhang lamented, 5 years, I didn't know he was suffering like this. Lin Chen. Fu Ziyuan's eyes reddened. Lin Chen didn't let us say, he didn't want you to know about the pain. Yes, all along, Lin Chen only told Aunt Zhang about his terminal illness, but he never mentioned the daily struggle with pain. Aunt Zhang. Fu Ziyuan exclaimed, and then he walked to another room, laying Aunt Zhang on the bed. After a while, Aunt Zhang woke up, and everyone hurried forward to check on her. Aunt Zhang, where does it hurt? I just feel pain here. Aunt Zhang covered her chest and said sadly, it's okay, let's go wait for Yin Wan. With that, Aunt Zhang struggled to stand up. In the room, Yin Wan brought a chair and sat in front of Lin Chen. From the moment she saw Lin Chen today until now, the two finally had a chance to be alone. She looked at Lin Chen. The person in front of her had a peaceful expression. Hey, sleepyhead, wake up, the sun is shining. Are you ignoring me? If you keep ignoring me, I'll get angry. Poof. Are you blaming me, always hating you? With that, Yin Wan stood up, took out a metal box, and opened it. Sleepyhead, do you remember this? Look at us, we were so compatible when we were kids. I never thought that I was so young and you were already thinking about me. It's really shameless. Ignoring me. You really are a sleepyhead. You should remember this note. You promised to protect me for a lifetime. You can't go back on your word. Lin Chen is a big sleepyhead. Alright, even if you ignore me, I forgive you. With that, Yin Wan leaned in close to Lin Chen and gently kissed him. After a while, their lips parted. Yin Wan moved the chair and leaned against Lin Chen, enjoying this rare tranquility. After a while, Yin Wan spoke again. Sleepyhead, people outside should be worried. Let's go out first. In the future, let's make a deal. If you don't speak, it means you agree, okay? Good, since you agree, let's go out. An hour passed. Lin Chen's door suddenly opened. Fu Ziyuan shivered and stared at the door. Soon, he saw Yin Wan pushing Lin Chen out. He looked at Lin Chen in the wheelchair, but there was still no change. His expression was peaceful, as if he were sleeping. Disappointed, he was overwhelmed. Dad, Aunt Zhang, Fu Ziyuan, let's go upstairs, Yin Wan said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Yin Wan's father quickly came to help. He grabbed the wheelchair's handle and looked at Fu Ziyuan. Uncle Lin, this wheelchair is custom-made. You can climb stairs by clicking here. After speaking, Fu Ziyuan walked forward and pressed a button behind the wheelchair. Suddenly, the bottom of the wheelchair began to change. The original small wheels turned into 16, 8 on each side, neatly arranged. But that's not all. 2 rubber-like materials emerged from the bottom of the wheelchair, tightly wrapping around the small wheels on both sides, resembling tank treads. Let's go. After completing this, Fu Ziyuan pushed the wheelchair towards the stairs. When they reached upstairs, Yin Wan's father was shocked by the wall full of photos. Each photo was of people who had been helped by the Angel Fund. But on that day, he had thrown away the transfer agreement. Thinking of this, Yin Wan's father regretted it deeply. His eyes instantly turned red. Yin Wan noticed her father's unusual behavior and quickly went over to him. Dad, Lin Chen won't blame you. Yin Wan's father nodded gently and walked towards the photos. Let me do it. Yin Wan took the wheelchair and also walked over. These are all the people you've helped. They have all grown up now, positive and sunny. By the way, I've also signed that agreement. Now, I am the owner of the Angel Fund. I'm amazing, right, Lin Chen? Oh, isn't this teacherly? She had cerebellar syndrome. If she can be cured, Lin Chen, you can definitely do it too. Yin Wan carefully explained each photo she saw, even reading out the children's messages. Her tone was slow, as if she also saw Lin Chen as a child. Time passed by second by second. In the blink of an eye, it was already dark outside. Fu Ziyuan sighed and gently said, Yin Wan, we should go back. Dr. Zhou said that Lin Chen cannot be away from the equipment for more than 8 hours. After speaking, Fu Ziyuan sighed again. How he wished Lin Chen could wake up now. Fu Ziyuan, Yin Wan turned her head, her eyes determined. I believe Lin Chen will definitely wake up. Hearing this, Fu Ziyuan was stunned for a moment. Actually, he doesn't have much affection for Yin Wan and Yin Wan's father. Lin Chen has done so much for them, and while they enjoy material abundance, they deeply resent Lin Chen. This made him very uncomfortable for a while. After these few episodes, he slowly let go of this knot. Especially this time, not knowing if Lin Chen was still alive, Yin Wan's father chose to dress his daughter in a wedding gown. Yin Wan resolutely went to the wedding. And now, Yin Wan's determined eyes have infected him. I understand, Fu Ziyuan responded, his eyes showing the same determination. He took Lin Chen and walked downstairs. At the entrance of Anshin Welfare Institute, Aunt Zhang, with tears in her eyes, looked longingly at the departing vehicle. Will this parting be forever? Lin Chen, child. Thinking of this, Aunt Zhang shouted and ran to catch up. The windows of the vehicle in front were not closed at all, as if waiting for her to say this. Fu Ziyuan leaned out and loudly replied, Aunt Zhang, I promise you, I will definitely bring Lin Chen back to you. Definitely. Aunt Zhang nodded repeatedly. Okay, I'll wait for you. the vehicle drove into the outskirts. Yin Wan leaned against Lin Chen, looking out the window. The buildings became fewer, and the road seemed to be a bit bumpy. Finally, the car stopped. Yin Wan pushed Lin Chen to walk down, looked around, and saw desolation. Fu Ziyuan walked to a large rock and looked for a while. The rock in front of him slowly moved aside. In sight, there was a small path that could accommodate 3 people walking side by side. This is Lin Chen's home in Jiangcheng. We all disagreed with him coming here at the time, but no one could stop him. At this moment, if Huang Lei and Teacher He were here, they would surely be shocked. It was one thing for Rose Island, but near the top of the list in China, Lin Chen unexpectedly had a base in Jiangcheng. Yin Wan nodded and looked at Lin Chen with a touch of tenderness in her eyes. The path was deep, about 100 meters, extending downward. At the end, there was an elevator. Fu Ziyuan stepped forward again. This time, everyone saw clearly. In front of Fu Ziyuan was an electronic scanner. It emitted a faint red light and scanned Fu Ziyuan's face. Immediately, the elevator made a light click sound and opened. Everyone went up. At this time, the elevator also started to descend. Ding! 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 After 3 beeps, the elevator stopped. The door opened, and about 30 people were waiting here. Lin Chen is still alive. Lin Chen is really still alive. Has Yin Wan also come? They were wearing white coats and looked excitedly at Lin Chen and Yin Wan. They are the people in Jiangcheng who treated Lin Chen. Dr. Zhou's main job is to develop special drugs. So, their feelings for Lin Chen are extremely deep. And, Lin Chen also wrote those letters here. Fu Ziyuan explained to Yin Wan as he walked out. Hearing this, Yin Wan nodded, then bowed deeply to the people in front of her. It's nothing, it's nothing. It's great that you could come. Lin Chen is saved now. Everyone quickly said, then went forward to take Lin Chen. Yin Wan, Lin Chen has been here for almost 4 years, until recently, when his condition deteriorated rapidly, we brought him back. During these 4 years, his way of communicating with the outside world was through video. Let's go, I'll take you to Lin Chen's room. Turning 2 corners, everyone arrived at a room. This is it. Fu Ziyuan said softly, then opened the door. Immediately, Yin Wan smelled a familiar fragrance. Looking closely, this was not a room. Beside a bed about 1.5 meters long, there were various medical devices. And around the machines were all roses, specifically Juliet roses. Seeing this scene, Yin Wan's heart clenched. She walked to Lin Chen's side, trying to force out a smile. Lin Chen, is this where you live? Not bad at all, the crowd said as they helped Lin Chen onto the bed. At that moment, Yin Wan sat at the bedside, gazing at Lin Chen in a trance. Suddenly, she seemed to remember something and began searching around. Fu Ziyuan had mentioned that Lin Chen's letter was placed at the bedside, but after searching around, she found nothing. Yin Wan, over here, Fu Ziyuan said, handing her a stack of letters. Yin Wan counted them in her hand, 9 letters. Why only 9? There were supposed to be 10 in the first episode. She looked at Fu Ziyuan with a puzzled expression. There's one more that can't be placed here, Fu Ziyuan said evasively. Yin Wan didn't press further and instead found the 4th letter in the normal sequence to open. Yin Wan, Fu Ziyuan suddenly called out. What's wrong? Yin Wan asked, looking puzzled. Can these letters be read again later? Why? Fu Ziyuan didn't respond immediately and after a while said, I'm sorry, I've been too selfish. Yin Wan smiled and handed him the letters, saying, it's okay. I'm already content to be by his side. Thank you, Yin Wan. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. With Lin Chen's appearance in this episode, the internet exploded once again. All the rumors about Lin Chen and Yin Wan were debunked, and everyone was moved by their heavenly love. Online, there were even dedicated websites praying for Lin Chen. The scene on Rose Island was so shocking that everyone became even more curious about Lin Chen's identity, sparking a frenzy of discussions. This time, it wasn't just in China, even international social video platforms like YouTube and Tuwezi began wildly reposting and discussing. All eyes in the world were now focused on China. Then, a piece of news broke the internet. Longing 6 officially announced that starting this week, the show would be broadcast twice, and depending on the situation, it might even become a thrice-weekly show. In the early morning, in the underground medical room, Yin Wan leaned against Lin Chen. For these 3 days, she had stayed here, never leaving his side. She entrusted Mumu to her father to take care of. Sleepyhead, wake up, Yin Wan softly called out. Not getting up, Yin Wan said, then picked up the letters at the bedside. There were only 4, as Fu Ziyuan had taken the remaining 5. Yin Wan's voice was gentle and slow. It took about 10 minutes to read these letters. At that moment, there was a knock on the door from outside. Yin Wan knew it was Lin Chen's routine check. Every morning, those in white coats would come at a fixed time. After the routine check, the lead doctor smiled faintly. Although his bodily functions haven't started to recover, his vital signs are stable. "Doctor, how long can Lin Chen hold on like this?" Yin Wan asked. She had asked many times over these 3 days, but the doctor never gave a clear answer. The lead doctor lowered his head and began collecting the instruments, as if he hadn't heard Yin Wan's question. "Doctor, please tell me," Yin Wan continued. The lead doctor put down the instruments, turned to Yin Wan, and gently said, "Probably about a week. If he doesn't recover his memory within a week, Lin Chen won't be able to hold on. And even if he regains the will to live, he probably won't last more than a month according to common sense. He's already at the end of his rope." "What?" Yin Wan's pupils contracted, and it felt like a heavy blow to her chest. If Lin Chen doesn't recover his memory, he can only live for a week. And if he does recover his memory, he can only live for a month. But the special medicine takes 3 years. Is Lin Chen destined to leave this world? Did Fu Ziyuan bring her here just to bid farewell to Lin Chen? A tear fell. The confidence she had built up in the past few days crumbled in the face of reality. "Yanwan, there is still hope. Lin Chen, he is the strongest person I have ever met. With you by his side, he should be able to hold on longer." Yanwan wiped away her tears, smiled, and said, Then she walked to Lin Chen's side, took out the letter, and started reading it again. Inside the live broadcast room, "What's going on with Longing 6? It's broadcasting again. Strange, why did it start broadcasting without any announcement? It's been black screen for half an hour, is this a prank?" Just a while ago, people suddenly discovered that the Longing 6 account had the live broadcasting symbol. Excited, everyone clicked in. However, after half an hour, the screen remained black. And at that moment, the screen suddenly lit up. Teacher He's young face appeared before everyone. Finally, has Lin Chen recovered? Has he regained his memory? Hello, audience friends, this is. Soon, Huang Lei, Zi Chen, Zhang Xiaoxing, and Peng Yuchang also appeared on the screen. Behind them, it seemed desolate. Where is this place? Where is Lin Chen? Where is Yanwan? Inside the live broadcast room, the barrage exploded. "Today, we have come to a new place again," Teacher He said, as the camera turned to the background. On the screen, a desolate land appeared, with several huge rocks. "The story of Lin Chen and Yanwan is not over yet. Today, we are invited to the place where Lin Chen is being treated. As for why we are here," Teacher He said, taking out a letter. "The answer is still in the letter." After speaking, the camera focused on the large rocks, which began to move. Soon, a downward path appeared on the screen. The 5 of them widened their eyes. Fu Ziyuan mentioned the specific location, but did not describe the details. When they first arrived here, they were also very surprised. There were no buildings here, and Fu Ziyuan was not there. What to film? However, out of strong trust in Fu Ziyuan, they still started the live broadcast. But this scene was too shocking. Another huge project. The camera turned, and the 5 of them walked into the path. Before long, they arrived at an elevator. "Let's take 2 cameras down first. We'll follow later," Director Zhang directed. Without hesitation, the 5 of them took 2 cameras and went down first. The elevator door opened, and Fu Ziyuan and the staff had been waiting for a long time. "Teacher Huang," Fu Ziyuan stepped forward and said, "Thank you for trusting me." Huang Lei looked around and smiled. "You called us, so I had to come." "Just kidding, Teacher Huang." After speaking, Fu Ziyuan gestured to the side. Everyone knew that Lin Chen and Yanwan were over there. Knock, knock, knock. The door was knocked again. Yanwan raised her head in confusion. At this time, there shouldn't be anyone coming. She opened the door, and the 5 of them appeared with smiling faces. "Yanwan, we've come to see Lin Chen." "Yanwan, how is Lin Chen?" Seeing the visitors, she felt warm in her heart and stepped aside to let the production team in. Thanks to Longing 6, she was able to resolve the misunderstanding with Lin Chen. As the group entered, they were shocked by the scene before them. Besides the bed and equipment, the room was filled with roses. "Yanwan," Fu Ziyuan said softly, with a pleading look in his eyes, then handed her a letter. "In order, this is the 4th letter Lin Chen wrote. You read it." After speaking, Fu Ziyuan lowered his head, unable to look into Yanwan's eyes. He had deliberately taken the letter from her before. Now, he had brought the production team over again, making Yanwan read the letter live. This seemed extremely heartless, but it was something he had to do. He must do it. "Okay," Yanwan said nothing, just took the letter and looked at Lin Chen with tender eyes. The letter began to be read. "Warm. Seeing your words is like seeing your face. Every time I write to you, my heart aches so much that I can't breathe. I even start to blame myself. Why did I have to go find you in the first place? If I hadn't found you, your world would probably be better off." As she started reading, Yin Wan's eyes began to redden. Die Z, what's the point of this world without you? Warm, you've grown a lot recently. You dare to confront your opponents head-on with Yang Ping and the others. My Warm, you've become a strong woman. But seeing your growth, I feel both relieved and heartbroken. If I could, I wouldn't want you to bear all this. The time I spent with you was the happiest time of my life. I often fantasized back then. A family, going camping every Saturday, finding a secluded place, and enjoying the mountains and rivers. But such scenes can only exist in dreams. Now, I can't even leave the room alone, let alone go out. I hate my own incompetence and feel deeply helpless. But I can't give up. I still want to see you reach the peak of the world with Yi Hui and watch Mumu grow up slowly. As the letter reached this point, everyone covered their mouths. Lin Chen's letter finally mentioned Mumu. In these few episodes, everyone was very restrained and never mentioned the fact that Lin Chen had a daughter. And now, the studio was in an uproar. Who is Mumu? Growing up slowly? Lin Chen and Yinwan have a child. Yes, and it sounds like a girl's name. No wonder Yinwan's father reacted so strongly at first, so that's how it is. Thank goodness the misunderstanding has been cleared up now. On the set, Yinwan seemed unaware, speaking calmly and steadily. Warm, remember that day? The sun was shining brightly. We went to the lake again. You were in white, like the first time I saw you. You suddenly leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "Do you want to know a secret?" I joked. What secret? We still have secrets from each other? You smiled mysteriously and took out a pregnancy test from your bag, placing it in front of me with a bright smile. Warm, I cried at that moment. I, of all people, was going to be a father. I wanted to hold you tightly, yet I was afraid of touching the child in your belly. My God, Warm, it's so miraculous that we have a child. Seeing how excited I was, Yinwan immediately smiled. That smile still appears in my dreams. Then, I took you to the hospital for a checkup. After the whole process, the doctor said the development was good. We both laughed. On the way home, you saw me foolishly smiling at the ultrasound and started teasing me again. You can't take your eyes off that little bean-shaped thing. Yes, at that time the child hadn't taken shape, just an oval. But it was my child. I grew up in an orphanage and never saw my parents. At that moment, I swore to give her all my love. As the letter reached this point, Yinwan took a deep breath, and tears fell onto the bedside. At that time, when Lin Chen heard that she was pregnant, he started cooking and bringing food to the company in various ways. He even bought over a dozen sets of radiation-proof maternity clothes and sent them to where he lived. She remembered thinking those clothes were ugly at the time, but Lin Chen didn't say a word, just happily put them on her. And he repeatedly reminded her. She had never seen Lin Chen so nagging. He was extremely nervous during those days. He even suggested several times to go see her father and hold a grand wedding. Thinking of this, Yinwan looked at Lin Chen and said softly, "If you want, we can have another child. Mumu also wants someone to accompany her." Hearing this, Zi Chen and the others burst into tears. Lin Chen had lost his parents at a young age, and now that he finally had his own child, he had to leave because of his injury. His heart must have been in so much pain at that time. Fu Ziyuan also sniffed. At that time, when Lin Chen woke up, he almost washed his face with tears. In the live broadcast room, sure enough, Lin Chen and Yinwan have a child. Heaven has mercy, Lin Chen still has descendants in the world. The letter continued to be read. But in such times, heaven is unwilling to give me a little more. One day later, I suddenly started to have headaches. My memory also started to deteriorate. I often forget to bring my keys when I go out. Sometimes, I don't even remember if I have eaten. What makes me most uncomfortable is that I even forgot to pick you up after work. I just stood blankly in front of the bus, trying hard to remember what I was supposed to do. When Yinwan read to this point, she paused. She remembered. At that time, Lin Chen always sent her to and from work. But in the period before he disappeared, she often couldn't wait for him. After getting off the bus, she would see Lin Chen sitting in the waiting area, staring blankly at the passing vehicles. At that time, she thought he had missed the bus. Now thinking back, he was slowly losing his memory. The letter continued to be read. I went to the hospital for a checkup. However, they couldn't find any cause. The doctor just prescribed some medicine and told me to relax. Maybe I've been working too hard recently. I don't know if it's psychological or what. Those medicines did have some effect. But one day, a week later, I found that the pain suddenly became more intense. In that moment, my past memories became even more fragmented. And the more I tried to recall the past, the more intense the pain became. But I refused to accept it. Why should my memory be taken away? Nuan, I was really scared at that time. I wasn't afraid of death, but I was afraid of forgetting you all. I was afraid that Mumu would lose his father. Nuan Nuan, that night, I kept chanting your name, forcibly not letting you leave my mind. Then I secretly came to where you lived, and lay by your bed, crying all night. Yin Wan widened her eyes. The night before Lin Chen disappeared, she had a dream. In the dream, Lin Chen was constantly crying, and she wanted to go forward to comfort him, but it seemed like there was a great distance between them. She couldn't reach Lin Chen no matter how hard she tried. When she woke up in the morning, she found the pillow wet. At that time, she thought she was drooling in her sleep due to pregnancy, but it turned out to be Lin Chen. And when she went to the hospital for a second checkup later, she found that there was a missing ultrasound report in Mumu's file. Now thinking back, it was also taken by Lin Chen. Did he anticipate that he would never return? Hearing this, everyone was already in tears. Fu Ziyuan clenched his fists, trembling slightly. He remembered. When Lin Chen came back in a coma, he was still calling out for Yin Wan. The letter continued to be read. Nuan Nuan, the next day, I returned to the island. The medical staff began to examine me. At that time, I was like a madman, constantly recalling memories of you. I couldn't forget. I absolutely couldn't forget. They often asked me if there were any abnormalities when I was in pain. Nuan Nuan, I never dared to say. I was afraid that if I said it, they wouldn't let me remember you. I won't allow anyone to strip you from my mind. Suddenly one day, I felt dizzy in my head. My consciousness gradually blurred, and I no longer remembered anything. When I woke up, it was already a year later. When I asked them what time it was, my heart completely shattered. It had already been a year. Nuan Nuan, after not seeing me for a year, do you miss me? But I soon realized that you must hate me. Thinking that you were filled with hatred towards me, sadness rose from the bottom of my heart. At that time, I endured the sadness and let them inquire about your news. What came back was earth-shattering news. The Nuan Nuan I held in the palm of my hand was forced to be homeless by someone. She lived in the basement for 4 months and suffered a lot. When I heard this news, I collapsed. I hated myself. I didn't leave any money at that time. I'm damn cursed. When the letter was read to this point, everyone felt Lin Chen's sadness. A serious illness, a year of sleep. Upon waking up, he discovered that his wife had suffered greatly. Despite having the ability, he had not provided for her. At that moment, how much regret he must have felt. Yin Wan looked at Lin Chen, and his frail body seemed to gain a bit of fullness. She reached out and touched Lin Chen's face, gently saying, Lin Chen, it's not your fault. Not your fault. Huang Lei and teacher, he sighed. When they saw this part, they also felt full of sorrow. Indeed, Lin Chen was not to blame. At that time, he did not know he would fall into a coma. But in this letter, it was clear that Lin Chen had not forgiven himself. Zichen stepped forward, comforting Yin Wan. Sister Yin Wan, let me read it. At that moment, Director Zhang and the camera crew happened to walk over. Seeing this scene, he did not speak, but silently retreated. Yin Wan smiled slightly at Zichen, shook her head, and then looked at the letter in her hand. The letter continued to be read. Nuan Nuan, I actually know. Deep down, you never truly hated me. It's just that the more this is the case, the more my heart aches. Do you remember? We once discussed the name of our child. You said, our child must have the most poetic name. I said, I am the lonely tree on the mountain, and you are the rain that nourishes me. Our child should be named Mumu, you said. At that time, you were a little disdainful, thinking that the name was too common. But when they told me that the child's name was Lin Mumu, I understood. You don't hate me, you are waiting for me to come home. But how can I return now? Leaving the treatment room, I could leave this world at any time. How can I bring you happiness in this state? The letter was read to this point. Yin Wan bit her lip. Yes, when Lin Chen named the child, she deliberately said something unpleasant. In fact, her heart was already filled with joy. Willing or not, when the delivery was near, the doctor asked if the child had a name. She blurted out, Lin Mumu. At that time, she was surprised herself. Clearly, her heart was filled with hatred. But at this moment, she let her daughter bear his surname and took the name he chose. Perhaps, deep down, she was always waiting for Lin Chen. Everyone looked at Yin Wan, feeling a sudden pang of pity. Lin Chen and Yin Wan were both extremely kind people. In their hearts, they never wanted to hurt each other. In the live broadcast room, I'm going to cry again. I always cry when watching a show. Lin Mumu, what a beautiful name. The letter continued to be read at the filming scene. Later, I forced them to move me to Jiangcheng, secretly helping you, to atone for my sins. I started to continue my study of painting. Let Yang Ping and them help you. And established another artistic painting company. You once said that you wanted Huaxia to keep up with the world in this aspect. This dream, I must fulfill for you. The pain has intensified recently, but it cannot defeat me. I will persevere. Being able to see you and Moo Moo for one more second makes it all worthwhile. Nuan Nuan, you are the light of my life. You are my faith in fighting the disease. Writing this, I still can't help but feel sad. Many details have been forgotten. The most memorable is when you reached out your hand and ran with me when we were young. No, it was in junior high, you appeared in front of me again. At that moment, my world lit up. It seems that it was by the lake. You were in white, painting roses. And I was by your side, watching you. White clothes. It seems that I still owe you a wedding. It's a pity. There's no chance in this lifetime. Nuan Nuan, if there is another life, I hope you won't meet me again. You deserve better. The letter was read to this point. Yin Wan suddenly widened her eyes. Damn it! How could she not have thought of this? She quickly walked up to Fu Ziyuan and asked, "Is there a way to get a set of white clothes now?" Fu Ziyuan understood in an instant and picked up the phone. After hanging up the phone, Fu Ziyuan said to Yin Wan, "It will be delivered in 10 minutes. On the set, everyone understood and stood quietly on the side, waiting. In the live broadcast room, the screen went black instantly. Then, an advertisement came on. About 10 minutes later, the screen lit up again. At this moment, on the screen, there appeared a whole row of about 40 to 50 sets of white dresses. Yin Wan walked towards these clothes, carefully observing each one. Finally, a gentle smile appeared on her lips as she picked up a dress and walked out. Not long after, Yin Wan returned. At this moment, she was already wearing a white dress, stunningly beautiful. Just then, the walls around the room suddenly lit up. In an instant, the wall screen began to change. Finally, Lin Chen and Yin Wan's encounter at the small lake appeared. Yin Wan, we have tried this method before, but it didn't work. However, with you here today, maybe it will be different. Yin Wan nodded, picked up a chair, and sat down next to the wall. Seeing this, Fu Ziyuan hurriedly went up to help Lin Chen up, facing Yin Wan. Lin Chen, haven't you found Yin Wan yet? She is by the lake ahead. Look, the one in the white clothes is her. Fu Ziyuan said softly, his eyes fixed on Lin Chen. Suddenly, Fu Ziyuan noticed Lin Chen's eyelashes tremble. It worked! In front of her, there is a rose, a Juliet rose, right? Just at that moment, Lin Chen's eyelids slowly opened. He looked at Yin Wan in a daze, a smile appearing on his lips. Just as everyone was about to cheer, Lin Chen closed his eyes again. Sensing something wrong, medical staff quickly rushed in. After a check, the lead medical staff widened their eyes and showed a surprised smile. His physical functions have improved. Lin Chen may wake up. Boom! This sentence made everyone tremble. Lin Chen, he might wake up. Really, when? Fu Ziyuan asked excitedly, placing Lin Chen properly and quickly rushing up to ask. Meanwhile, Yin Wan's smile deepened. Just a moment ago, Lin Chen smiled at her. His physical functions are slowly recovering. Also, at this rate of recovery, he may wake up. The lead explained to everyone. Although not directly stating the time, his words inspired everyone present. There is hope. Nothing is more frightening than despair. Good, good, I got it. Fu Ziyuan's chest heaved with excitement as he responded. Then, he looked at Yin Wan and bowed deeply again. Yin Wan, please continue reading the letter. Fu Ziyuan reached out his right hand, trembling as he took out another letter and handed it over. Zichen, Zhang Xiaoxing, and Pang Yuchang were all stunned. According to the previous 4 episodes, the letters were usually read one by one. But now, not only did the program start immediately, the letters were also being read continuously. Soon, they all understood. Lin Chen's time was running out. Huang Lei and teacher, he sniffled. This letter had arrived. In the live broadcast room, what's going on? Reading 2 letters in a row, at this rate, Lin Chen's story is about to end. Are you all blind? Lin Chen is like this, and you still haven't finished reading the letter. On the set, Yin Wan took the letter without asking any questions. She turned and walked to Lin Chen's side. Bending down, she opened the letter in her hand. Just as she read the first 2 words, Yin Wan felt a heartache that made it hard to breathe. This letter. It was written by Lin Chen for his daughter. Zi Chen and the others also felt a sudden pang in their noses. Thinking back to Mumu's birthday party, they all felt their hearts being tugged. Yin Wan steadied her voice and continued reading the letter. Mumu, my dear daughter. Just thinking of you fills my heart with guilt. When you were still in your mother's belly, you were the longing and hope of your father. But, your father did not witness the moment of your birth. He did not even accompany you for a moment. All he had were your photos and the videos they sent back. The first time he saw you, you were already 4 months old, able to lift your head and roll over, babbling incessantly to the world. You, so small, tormented your mother and grandfather to no end. Looking at those photos and videos, your father found a reason to persist. You and your mother are the treasures in his heart. He will do everything in his power to fight the illness and return to your and your mother's side as soon as possible. As you grew day by day, your father's health seemed to improve as well. He could remember more and more things. Finally, at 8 months old, you could stand up, wobbling like a little duck. Mumu, do you know how proud your father was? But the good times did not last. They stopped sending any news about you, no matter how your father pleaded with them. Mumu, they are not bad people. They just don't want to see your father sad. The days without seeing you drove your father almost crazy. Finally, they couldn't resist your father's persistence and sent back your photos and videos. Mumu, you have grown up. You are already 1 year old. But Mumu, who could stand up at 8 months, still couldn't walk at 1 year old. Reading up to this point, Yinwan felt a deep pain. At 8 months, Mumu was diagnosed with acute aplastic anemia. This disease, once it strikes, is extremely dangerous, with a very high mortality rate. For half a year, Mumu received 4 critical condition notices in a row. Only a bone marrow match could cure her. But despairingly, as a mother, she was not a match for her daughter. The doctor's suggestion was for the child's father to try. At that time, she was like a madwoman, calling Lin Chen every day and sending him messages for help, just so Lin Chen could come back to save the child. Now it seems that Lin Chen definitely did not receive those calls and messages, and the staff even cut off Lin Chen's contact with the outside world. Yinwan couldn't imagine how Lin Chen had spent those 4 months, and how he had begged those staff members. Fortunately, Mumu later found a donor and managed to get through this difficult time. Yinwan, I'm sorry, I had to do that at the time. Fu Ziyuan said apologetically. It's okay, it's all in the past, you did it for Lin Chen's sake, Yinwan responded. Zichen and the others didn't quite understand. Why didn't they let Lin Chen see the child in the letter, and for as long as 4 months? In the end, they had no choice but to send back the videos and photos. Tears welled up in Huang Lei's eyes. He and teacher he had read the letter and naturally knew the reasons behind it. But this story was truly heartbreaking. The letter continued. Dad asked them. Dad still remembers their answer. 8 months of development does not represent the future. Most children can only walk at 1 year and 2 months. Dad naturally didn't believe it. Not letting Dad see you for 4 months, something must have happened during this time. Dad watched your videos and photos over and over again, not missing a single detail, carefully examining them. At first, Dad couldn't find any abnormalities. He just felt that you seemed a little thin. At that time, Dad had a very bad temper and often scolded them. But they never told Dad what had happened. Mumu, finally, when you were 1 year and 3 months old, Dad finally found a clue. There was medicine in your video, appearing in the corner. If Dad hadn't looked carefully, he wouldn't have seen it. But when Dad enlarged the video, the text on it was blurry. It's okay. Dad is a resourceful person. Since that day, Dad began to search through various medicine boxes one by one for comparison. Finally, he identified the medicine. It was then that I realized my dear Mumu was also suffering from a serious illness, just like her father. It's so unfair. Why does this have to happen to me? Dad is so resentful. You, so young, have to go through such hardships. I took the evidence and confronted them, but no one dared to answer me. During that time, Dad just wanted to be by your side. Even if it was just for a second, it would have been good. When Zichen read this, she was once again shocked. It turns out that Mumu had also suffered from a serious illness. The heavens are truly unfair. Yinwan's mother passed away due to illness, and Lin Chen also struggled on the brink of life and death. Even Mumu, who was only 8 months old, encountered the same fate. This family's fate is too tragic. Everyone looked at Yinwan, their eyes filled with extreme heartache. However, they all had one question in their hearts. What illness did Mumu actually have? Yinwan took a deep breath and said softly, when Mumu was 8 months old, she suddenly developed a high fever. Although we were anxious, we didn't think much of it. It's normal for newborns to have a fever. But as soon as we arrived at the hospital, Mumu began to have difficulty breathing. It was then that I realized this was not a simple fever. After a series of tests, the doctor told me that the child had developed an infection. The current test results suspected acute aplastic anemia. I was terrified at that time. The name sounded so hopeless. That night, Mumu's skin began to show blood spots and large bruises. The final diagnosis also came out. It was indeed acute aplastic anemia as the doctor had said. There is only one way to cure this disease, and that is through a bone marrow transplant. However, after testing, I and Mumu were not a match. Yinwan's tone was very calm, but everyone could hear the heart-wrenching emotions within. A child who was only 8 months old had such a serious illness. As a mother, she must have felt so desperate at that time. Soon, everyone thought of it. Although Yinwan didn't say it, she must have gone crazy looking for Lin Chen. No wonder. No wonder Yin Wan's father hated Lin Chen so much at that time. It was not only because of Lin Chen's affair, but also because of Mu Mu. It was only during the third episode of the program that, in order to protect the child and Yin Wan's father never spoke out. Sister Yin Wan, Zi Chen called out softly. As she read the letter by letter, her pity for Yin Wan grew stronger and stronger. One can only imagine how one would collapse if faced with such things. Yin Wan turned her head at the sound and spoke again. It's okay, it's all in the past now. Later, a matching donor was found, and it seems that Lin Chen secretly helped. At this point, Yin Wan suddenly froze. Could it be? She picked up the letter in her hand and quickly began to read. Mu Mu. At that time, Dad was almost going crazy, constantly searching for various information. I finally realized the kind of torment my Mu Mu had endured. How much Dad wished that he could bear this pain for you. In the end, Dad also found out. The cure for this disease requires a bone marrow transplant. And your mother definitely did not find a match. At that time, Dad was furious. He lashed out at them. For such a long time, they had not found a suitable donor for my Mu Mu. This time, they knew they couldn't hide it anymore. They told Dad that they had searched through the entire bone marrow bank of Huaxia and even searched the whole world. In the end, they found nothing. Mu Mu. When you read this, you should know what Dad is going to do, right? Yes. I am your dear Dad. Who else in this world can match your bone marrow? It's me. As the letter reached this point, Yin Wan's hand was trembling constantly. It turns out that the one who saved her daughter was not some so-called donor, but her biological father. These years. I'm sorry, I cannot fulfill that request. The screen showed Lin Chen aging a few years, with a beard growing out. As the videos progressed, Lin Chen's appearance changed more and more. In the end, even a few strands of white hair appeared on his temples. Lin Chen said he was afraid of Mu Mu finding out the videos were fake. He also hoped that Mu Mu could see what his father would look like 18 years later. So, we simulated Lin Chen's appearance 18 years later. For each video, we would first do his makeup and then shoot. It was on that day that he wrote this fifth letter, Fu Ziyuan said, closing the video, his chest heaving. That day, Lin Chen was very calm. After each video was shot, he would carefully check for any omissions. And all these videos were completed within a day. Everyone advised him not to rush, but he said Mu Mu didn't have much time left. Fuji looked at the emaciated Lin Chen on the bed, who had suffered so much. And you, how much time do you have left? He said, then stepped forward, took the letter from Yin Wan, who was overwhelmed with grief, and handed it to Zi Chen. You read it. Zi Chen took a deep breath, wiped her eyes, and then took the letter. The letter continued to be read. Mu Mu, when I thought of this, Dad couldn't wait to request a match. But they stopped me from saving you. How could they? So, Dad scolded them. Mu Mu, you can't have Dad's temper in the future. A few hours later, the results came out. But it said it wasn't a match. How could that be? I'm your father. How could it not be a match? I questioned them. They said, your mother didn't match either. This is as normal as it gets. Mu Mu, who are they to Dad? At a glance, I saw them lying. So, the ignorant Dad caused a scene again. Finally, the real test results were sent to Dad. When I saw the words, match successful, Dad was so excited he couldn't speak. Mu Mu, you're finally saved. I immediately requested the surgery. Dad didn't want to wait a single second. But they stopped Dad again and told him that this might be the end of my life. At that moment, Dad smiled. As long as you can live, what is there to fear about death? But when I thought that you would no longer have a father, my heart began to ache. So, I shot 18 birthday videos. Mu Mu, I want you to know that Dad will always be by your side. Until you grow up. When the letter reached this point, only the last page was left. Zi Chen reached out her right hand to turn the page. Suddenly, Yin Wan turned her head and said softly, this is the last page, let me do it. Yin Wan, can you handle it? Zi Chen asked worriedly. Everyone felt heartbroken when Yin Wan read the letter earlier. The contents of the letter were like sharp blades, piercing through. For Mu Mu, Lin Chen was willing to sacrifice his life. What is my little pain compared to that? And, Lin Chen probably also wants me to read. Yin Wan said, picking up the letter and turning to the last page. The letter continued to be read. Mu Mu, Dad may have to break his promise. I can't come back to see you. Dad knows that he didn't give you a complete home, causing you a lot of grievances, always deceiving you and not being there for you. But you have to know, having you is my greatest happiness. Thank you for coming into my life. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a father. Mu Mu, you've grown up. In the videos, you call for Mom. Please, in the future, live for Dad, take care of Mom. She has suffered too much. Dad really doesn't want to leave you. I want to see you grow up. See you go to elementary school, middle school, and college. I want to know what you will look like. I want to see you bring your friends home. Dad and Mom will cook for you. I want to see you get married. I want to drink the tea you offer. But I can't, that's how life is. The saplings are all growing next to the big tree. They are all fruits that fell from the big tree last year. Dad hopes you can grow up healthy and happy. Learn to be grateful and cherish the people around you. Maybe one day in the future, we will meet again. Goodbye, Moo Moo. Dad loves you. With this letter, it ends here. Everyone felt like there was something stuck in their throat, extremely uncomfortable. This last page is clearly Lin Chen saying goodbye to his daughter. Yinwan put away the letter and leaned close to Lin Chen's ear, gently saying, "Our daughter is very well behaved. She often talks about you and asks where you are. She also knows what you look like. I often show her your photo and tell her, this is your dad. If you love her, come and see her in person. She really misses you." And at that moment, the doctor guarding Lin Chen suddenly exclaimed, "Lin Chen's hand seems to have moved again, he can hear us." Hearing this, everyone quickly went to check. "Lin Chen! Lin Chen! Lin Chen!" Everyone kept calling out, trying to stimulate Lin Chen through words. But this time, just like before, after Lin Chen's slight movement, there was still no response. On the other side, after another check, the doctor said, "He has regained some consciousness. At this rate, Lin Chen will wake up in less than half a month." Oh my god! This time, the doctor actually gave a specific time. Hearing this, everyone's spirits were lifted. Especially Yin Wan, who kept softly speaking to Lin Chen's ear. Inside the live broadcast room, it was already in an uproar. Lin Chen will wake up in half a month? That's great! Finally, it's not a tragedy anymore. Lin Chen is finally going to wake up. I hope his illness can also be cured. Just as everyone's attention was focused on Lin Chen, Fu Ziyuan quietly left the room. About a minute later, he appeared at the door again. "Yin Wan, I'm sorry." This was his third apology to Yin Wan. For a moment, everyone's gaze turned to him. After Fu Ziyuan finished speaking, he slightly lowered his head and slowly moved away. Soon, Yin Wan's father's figure entered everyone's sight. Uncle Lin, Zichen, Zhang Xiaoxing, and Peng Yuchang all shouted, "Dad!" Yin Wan almost couldn't hold back when she saw her father. Dad knows everything. Yin Wan's father was filled with tears, his lips trembling constantly. In these 5 years, his misunderstanding of Lin Chen ran deep, especially reaching its peak after Mumu fell ill. At this moment, knowing that Lin Chen gave up hope for his own life for Mumu, it pierced his heart like a needle. If time could be turned back, he really wished that during the Dragon Boat Festival, he warmly welcomed Lin Chen into the family. But he did something like that. "Uncle Lin Chen told me. He never had parents, but he met 2 benefactors. One is Aunt Zhang, who raised him like a mother. The other is you, who bought him the best birthday cake and brought Yin Wan to his side. He said, in his heart, you are his father." Fu Ziyuan said softly. In the past, he harbored resentment towards Uncle Lin. During Lin Chen's treatment, whenever Yin Wan's father was mentioned, he looked disdainful. Lin Chen patiently told him many things. What Uncle Lin did was just to protect his daughter. Now, Fu Ziyuan also gradually understood. The resentment in his heart gradually dissipated. And this time when he called Uncle Lin, the other party didn't even hesitate and agreed. "Father?" Yin Wan's father murmured, "I don't deserve it." After speaking, Yin Wan's father lowered his head, and tears fell to the ground. Then, he took a deep breath and smiled. He shouted in the direction he came from, "Mumu, come here." Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They had always deliberately kept her hidden, until today with these 2 letters, the public only knew of her existence. How did she come this time? Everyone stared at the door intently. After a moment, a little head appeared at the door. She seemed a little shy and unsure, peeking into the room with half of her head, her big eyes darting around. Suddenly, a look of joy appeared in the little girl's eyes. Her mother was here too. "Mom!" She smiled and ran towards her mother. It had been 3 days since she had seen her mother, and she missed her very much. Seeing her daughter, tears fell from Yin Wan's eyes once again. She took a step forward and embraced her daughter. "Mom, where did you go? Mumu misses you so much." The little girl held on to her mother's neck. "Mom is with Dad. Dad is not busy with work lately, so he has time to be with us." When she heard the word Dad, the little girl's eyes lit up. She turned around and searched around for her father. After making eye contact with everyone, they all lowered their heads. "Mom, where is Dad?" the little girl asked as she looked at her mother. Yin Wan let go of her child, took her hand, and walked towards the hospital bed. "Is that the person lying down, Dad?" The little girl could only see Lin Chen's profile, and with Lin Chen looking so thin, Mumu hesitated. "Yes, that's Dad," Yin Wan gently responded. After getting confirmation from her mother, the little girl broke free from her mother's hand and rushed over. Dad, I'm Moo Moo. Moo Moo came to see you. Moo Moo misses Dad so much. As she spoke, the little girl had already reached the bedside. In the room, no one spoke. Everyone looked at Moo Moo, waiting for a miracle to happen. And at that moment, tears welled up in Lin Chen's eyes. Dad, why are you crying? Moo Moo was very good. Dad, why aren't you speaking? As she spoke, the little girl reached out to wipe Lin Chen's tears. At this moment, sobs filled the room. Everyone was praying for Lin Chen to open his eyes. Dad, are you asleep? Dad, why are you so thin? Did you not eat well? Dad, can you take Moo Moo out to play? Moo Moo is scared. Sensing the strange atmosphere in the room, the little girl suddenly lowered her voice. And at that moment, Lin Chen's arm gradually lifted. Seeing this, the little girl quickly leaned in. The emaciated hand was placed on Moo Moo's head. Dad, you're finally awake. But after a while, this arm slipped from Moo Moo's head and fell to the side. At the same time, the piercing alarm sounded again. The doctor on the side, with a look of surprise in his eyes, quickly stepped forward to check. After a moment, he spoke. You all should leave. We need to conduct a thorough examination on Lin Chen. With that, more than a dozen people in white coats rushed in from outside the door. The little girl was startled by this and tears filled her eyes. Is it because of me that Dad's work was affected? Yinwan comforted her daughter softly. Moo Moo, it has nothing to do with you. Dad is just too tired from work. He fell asleep. Let him rest for a while. After saying that, she walked out. Yes. Moo Moo is good. Moo Moo won't make trouble. Moo Moo will wait for Dad to wake up. Hearing this, Yinwan's nose tingled. But thinking of the previous alarm, her heart was filled with hope. The filming continued. Zhang Dao and his team waiting outside the door saw everyone coming out and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong? What happened? Is Lin Chen okay?" Huang Lei wiped his eyes and smiled in response. It should be good news. Hearing this, Zhang Dao let out a sigh of relief. At this point in the filming, he had lost all sense of the ratings. Now, the only thing he cared about was whether Lin Chen could wake up. He didn't want Lin Chen's tragedy to happen again. Good news is good. Good news is good. At this moment, Fu Ziyuan also walked up and said, "Thank you for being able to film this episode. I'm ashamed. At first, we only made last-minute changes to the script because of the soaring ratings." Director Zhang quickly waved his hand and said, "Anyway, you all agreed to many unreasonable requests from me, and I am very grateful," he continued. "Actually, there's something I'm not sure if I should say or not." Director Zhang pondered for a moment and said, "You say." Director Zhang paused for a moment and began to organize his words. Now that the misunderstanding between Yinwan and Lin Chen has been resolved, with her and Moo Moo here, the probability of Lin Chen waking up should be very high. Do we still need to continue filming our show? Director Zhang explained quickly, "Don't get me wrong, continuing to film is something we desperately want, but for Lin Chen, is it a bit cruel?" Fu Ziyuan patiently listened and then smiled slightly. A person like Lin Chen should be known to the whole world, and here, Fu Ziyuan's eyes carried a hint of anticipation. And it's time to make it public. Half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. The door to Lin Chen's room was opened, and a group of people in white coats walked out. "How is Lin Chen?" Yinwan, holding her daughter, quickly walked up and asked. The leading doctor smiled slightly and said, "It's good news. His physical functions have recovered a bit. And he also responded to our examination. I estimate that Lin Chen will wake up in a week. Just don't give him too much stimulation right now. It's better to be cautious. Since we've controlled the condition, let's take it step by step." With that, he led the group of people in white coats outside. Not long after, he turned back and said, "Oh, by the way, don't film now. And you and Moo Moo, don't get too close to him for now. Let Lin Chen rest for a while." Yinwan retracted her left leg and nodded to stand still. One more week, just one more week and Lin Chen will wake up. Thinking of this, Yinwan's heart began to beat violently. "Mom, is Dad still sleeping?" The little girl in her arms raised her head and asked. "Yes, Dad is tired. We'll go see him again later," Yinwan said gently to the little girl in her arms. "Okay. Moo Moo will wait for Dad to wake up." On the other side, half of the live broadcast screen was covered by Teacher He's face. Everyone knew that at this time, it meant the show was about to end. Dear audience, episode 5 of Longing 6 is officially over. See you in the next episode. The camera turned and focused on the other 4 people. Everyone greeted the camera one by one, but there was no excitement on their faces. "Ah, it's over already, and I haven't had enough. But at least we heard good news. Lin Chen will wake up in a week. Is your focus all here?" Before, Lin Chen could send someone to the far northwest with just one phone call. Can Rose Island really be built with current technology? And this underground treatment room? It's all like watching a science fiction movie. Don't you find it strange? Yeah, I've been following Lin Chen and Nuan Nuan's story, and it really doesn't seem like current technology. I think the next episode should reveal it. Lin Chen is definitely an extraordinary person. The live broadcast ended, and director Zhang prepared to leave with the crew. But at this moment, Fu Ziyuan stopped them. Director Zhang, I want to film another episode in 2 days. What? Director Zhang was suddenly surprised. This means that 3 episodes will be filmed within 6 days. Fu Ziyuan did not deliberately lower his voice. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on him. There was a look of doubt in everyone's eyes. Please, Director Zhang, this is very important to me and Lin Chen, Fu Ziyuan said, looking sincerely at Yinwan and her father. Yinwan nodded when she heard this, then turned to Director Zhang and said, Director Zhang, 2 days later, please shoot another episode. Although she didn't understand what Fu Ziyuan wanted to do, she could keenly feel that Fu Ziyuan had no ill intentions. Moreover, his friendship with Lin Chen was genuine. In addition, with this episode, Lin Chen had shown significant improvement. Lastly, and most importantly, Fu Ziyuan also said that it was very important for Lin Chen. Director Zhang looked at Huang Lei and Teacher He, seeking their opinions. Both Huang Lei and Teacher He nodded gently. Okay, we'll shoot another episode in 2 days. Also, Fu Ziyuan said, this time, please announce it to the program group. I hope more people will watch it. No problem. Longing 6 is currently the hottest program, so there will definitely be a lot of viewers. After hearing this, Fu Ziyuan nodded, then said in a deep voice, for the next episode in 2 days, I hope it will be Lin Chen's last participation in the program. What? The last episode with Lin Chen's participation? What does that mean? Aren't there still 4 letters? Everyone looked at Fu Ziyuan with astonished eyes, waiting for his response. Fu Ziyuan did not respond, he just sniffed and bowed deeply again. This gesture made everyone hesitant to ask further questions. Let's go, Director Zhang, Teacher He said softly. Director Zhang opened his mouth, wanting to ask something, but ultimately didn't say anything. The group, carrying their equipment, headed towards the elevator. Xiao Mumo, goodbye, we'll come back to play with you later. Zichen and others gathered around Yinwan, patted Mumo's head, and said goodbye with a smile. Goodbye, Sister Zichen, Xiao Mumo grinned. Zhang Xiaoxing and Pang Yuchang pretended to be jealous and said, what about us? Goodbye, Brother Xiaoxing and Brother Yuchang. The little girl raised her hand and called out without hesitation. Goodbye, Mumo. After the program group left, Fu Ziyuan approached Yinwan and her father. Do you think I am being too overbearing and arbitrary? I didn't show you the letter, and many arrangements were made on my own. Yinwan shook her head and smiled after hearing this. Without your overbearing and arbitrary decisions, I and Lin Chen would never have been able to meet again. You brought us a glimmer of hope. Do whatever you want, I just need to stay by Lin Chen's side. After hearing this, Fu Ziyuan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and said seriously, thank you. That night, Fu Ziyuan lay on the sofa. In front of him was a huge screen. On the screen, 2 young men were shuttling through the desert. Fu Ziyuan, can you keep up? I can't believe you've trained before. Damn, I don't believe it. I can't keep up with you. You really can't keep up. Go home and sell sweet potatoes. Damn it. I'll compete with you. As he watched, tears fell from the corners of his eyes. At that moment, his phone rang. Fu Ziyuan picked it up and immediately showed a respectful expression, sitting up straight. Fu Ziyuan, how is Lin Chen? A serious voice came from the other end of the phone. Judging by the tone, the person should be no less than 50 years old. He hasn't woken up yet, but it should be soon, Fu Ziyuan replied. The voice on the other end fell silent for a moment and then asked, have you succeeded? Yes, we have succeeded, and we have also resolved this issue. Under the chain reaction, the other projects have also succeeded, Fu Ziyuan respectfully replied. So, does this mean that Lin Chen has really done it? The voice on the phone became somewhat excited. Yes, he has done it, Fu Ziyuan responded, his tone filled with pride. Good, good, good. The voice on the other end said 3 good in a row, then continued, when do you plan to announce it? In 2 days. The next day, the official Weibo account of Longing 6 released an announcement. In view of the unprecedented popularity of Longing 6 and everyone's deep concern for Lin Chen's situation, the program group has decided to broadcast again in 2 days. Together with everyone, witness Lin Chen's improvement. Stay tuned. Once the news was released, the entire internet exploded. In the past, Longing was only broadcasted weekly. Now, not only is it truly being broadcasted twice a week, but it has even become thrice a week. For a while, discussions about this matter were everywhere, on Douyin, Weibo, and Tieba. However, unlike before, there were fewer and fewer dissenting voices. It seemed that everyone, consciously or unconsciously, had formed a tacit understanding and were all looking forward to Lin Chen's improvement. At the same time, the emaciated photo of Lin Chen had been wildly circulated on self-media and even made it to the headlines of major portal websites. What shocked everyone even more was that the state media of China was also reporting on this matter. In the morning, it was only mentioned on the news channel, and at noon, it was directly reported on the program News 30 Minutes for 5 minutes. By the time of the news broadcast in the evening, it didn't stop there. At 10 o'clock in the evening, all major video websites simultaneously announced that they would rebroadcast Longing 6. At the same time, when everyone turned on their televisions, they found that all channels had a scrolling subtitle: "This station will broadcast Longing 6 in full tomorrow." This is crazy. What's going on? It's understandable for video websites, perhaps they want to ride the wave of popularity. It's also understandable for local satellite TV stations, maybe they want to boost their ratings. But what's the deal with the state media? They actually want to rebroadcast Longing 6. What's even more exaggerated is that all 21 channels of the state media are involved in the rebroadcast. China was in an uproar. This time, Longing 6 was no longer just the most popular show on the internet. Tomorrow, it will become the most deeply ingrained live broadcast in the history of China. Longing 6 resting room. Director Zhang paced back and forth in the room. The air conditioning was already turned to the lowest setting, but his forehead was covered in sweat. The unprecedented pressure made it difficult for him to catch his breath. Just a while ago, the director of Durian TV suddenly called. He informed Zhang that tomorrow's live broadcast would be rebroadcasted by all the national television stations, including well-known major video websites, and that all the signal vehicles of the station had been sent to Rose Island. Upon hearing this news, Zhang initially made a few jokes, thinking that the director was joking. But the director spoke seriously for the second time. Zhang couldn't laugh anymore. This is real. It was at this moment that he began to understand. Yesterday, Fu Ziyuan entrusted him to simply respect the program group. If he were to convey directly to the higher-ups, Longing 6 would still be broadcasted 6 times a week. In theory, this was a good thing. Even the Spring Festival Gala didn't have such specifications. As the director of the program, he would definitely go down in history. However, such a big production made him inexplicably feel pressured. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became, and the pressure grew. Don! 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 There was a knock on the door. Zhang was delighted that someone had come to share the pressure. Before long, Huang Lei and Teacher He walked in. "Director Zhang, what's the matter that's so urgent?" Huang Lei asked with a smile as soon as he came in. "Teacher, he just took off his clothes, he hasn't even showered and you called him over." Director Zhang's expression was serious as he responded, "Just now, the director called." As soon as this was said, Huang Lei and Teacher He's reactions were completely different. Teacher He, as an old hand at Durian TV, was familiar with the director's style of doing things. Generally speaking, he wouldn't interfere too much with the specific content of the program. At this critical moment, the director called. There must be something happening. Huang Lei, not being part of Durian TV, was not so sensitive to this situation. Seeing that both of them looked serious, he couldn't help but frown. "What did the director say?" Teacher He quickly asked. After a moment of contemplation, Director Zhang responded, "Tomorrow's live broadcast will be rebroadcasted by all the national television stations, including major video websites." "What?" Huang Lei and Teacher He exclaimed in unison. After speaking, Teacher He asked again, "Which national television stations are included?" "Without exception, from major media to local stations, all will be broadcasting." Zhang added, "And the filming location for this episode is set on Rose Island, as the station manager mentioned." Sigh, both of them took in a sharp breath. All television stations, including the major video platforms. Who could have such great influence? Lin Chen or Fu Ziyuan? Previously, Huang Lei and Teacher He had speculated about Lin Chen's identity. At this moment, it seemed they needed to speculate further. "Two of you, I'm under a lot of pressure, don't just stand there in shock. Come up with some ideas," Zhang anxiously expressed. After hearing this, Huang Lei fell silent for a while. Suddenly, he burst into laughter. Shortly after, Teacher He also joined in the laughter. "Come on, as regular guests, you also need to take on a major role." Zhang became even more urgent upon seeing this. "Zhang, relax, you're getting worked up for nothing," Huang Lei laughed. Despite Huang Lei's words, Zhang's anxious expression did not diminish in the slightest. "How can I not be worked up? It's a nationwide broadcast, what if something goes wrong?" "Zhang, snap out of it." After Huang Lei spoke, he walked over to Zhang's side. "Think about it, since the beginning of this season, have we really played a significant role? At best, we've only served to connect Lin Chen's story. This episode will probably be the same, we just need to do our part well, there's no need to be nervous. Besides, if you're so nervous, can you interfere with the upcoming filming?" Zhang, take it easy. After Huang Lei spoke, Teacher He also chimed in. Indeed, for tomorrow's filming, we just need to do our part well. As for the rest, someone else has surely already figured it out for us. After hearing this, Zhang's anxious expression did not ease. Initially, he had been worried about the ratings, but now, the viewership for Longing for 6 had broken records. However, this was a nationwide broadcast. By then, the combined viewership across all platforms would likely reach hundreds of millions. This was such an honor, it was impossible not to be nervous. Huang Lei shrugged at Teacher He, then settled onto the sofa. They were surprised by this matter, even to the point of being shocked. But unlike Zhang, they were now more concerned about Lin Chen's true identity. What would happen during tomorrow's live broadcast?